probably just got my live. You know what I mean? And the reason is because I went to BOOKMAP yesterday and I forgot to switch over to BOOKMAP. I took profits on this trade in front of everyone before this dumped. I said it was about to dump. I took profits on the trade. I swear to you I did. I'm not in the trade anymore. And I can show you my gains on the trade right here in my order history. I am so sorry, everybody. I'm sitting here live streaming for freaking 20 minutes straight, going blah, 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 blah. I did the countdown and everything. Not one person on my team was able to contact me and tell me I'm live. I told my wife, she's got to be able to see the live. I told her for the rest of her life, she needs to be upstairs at 10:10. And if I'm not live, she needs to come downstairs and tell me that I'm not live. I have a staff of 5 people. Not one person was able to tell me that I wasn't live in the right place. I'm not blaming anyone. What? I can't get those. I'm in the charts. You're the only one that can do it. You're the only one. I can't look at my phone when I'm in the charts. I don't use my phone, everybody. I don't use this, everyone. I want to make it really clear. I don't use this. I don't go on Discord. I am not in my DMs. The only way to get to me is to call my wife, to my whole staff. The only way to get to me is to call my wife, guys. I do not use a cell phone like a normal person. I don't use this. I don't use this. Poor people use their phone every day. I'm being honest. I'm not trying to be rude. Billionaires do not use their phone. Google billionaires. They have a phone. They leave it in the garbage. They have an assistant for that stuff. Like, I don't use my phone. I don't answer text messages. I don't answer phone calls. I am teaching students daily, every single day. All my time goes to my students and my Discord. I am in Discord. Literally, I'm either with my kids out in the yard, I'm either making love to my wife, or I'm in Discord. Those are the only 3 places you're going to see me. Or I'm getting some food. You know what I mean? Shout out to everybody here on the live. So I'm a little crazed today because I just went live for 20 straight minutes and nobody heard me. You know what I mean? It is positive. This is positive. Don't get it wrong. This is super positive. I want y'all to laugh. This is funny. Don't get creeped out. You know, I'm the lifer, baby. Shout out to everybody here on the live. Let's get it going. 237 people, 141 likes. Ruin the live stream because, you know, people are like, where is the dude? You know, Sam, we love you. Take a deep breath. We're with you. I know, but the regular 500 people that would be here are not with me. So I already damaged my live stream. So mentally, it's affecting me. So just deal with the fact that I'm a type A. I want everything to go right. And something didn't go right today. All right. I told my wife that if she has to watch the live, dude, my wife eats off my live stream. My whole staff eats off my live stream. Everyone that surrounds me eats, right? So, like, I just need some help. I do this 1,000 days straight. I'm going to make mistakes, right? I just need some help. I just need a little help. That's all. All right. We love you, Sam. I made 90% on the Bitcoin long, still going. Good morning. 230% on this Bitcoin this morning. I got you, Sam. Don't tell me to relax when they were showing some emotion. I know, right? That pisses people off. Shout out to everybody here on the live. It is my fault. It is my fault. I'm just asking for some help, though. Like, you've got to call my wife and say, Sam's not live yet. I just went live to BOOKMAP. I'm going to go to BOOKMAP and see if my live stream is up. I believe it is. They gave me their key. They were like, why is this guy going live right now to our, to our site? And that's the thing, too, because when you change up and go to YouTube, changes up. I probably just I want to see if I just out of nowhere just started doing a live. No, I guess I don't know where it went. Forrest is J. That's funny. Now I don't know where that live stream went. It just went to the abyss. It was going somewhere. Funny, it was going somewhere. Maybe it's in the videos now. Anyway, I'm calm now. Sam, kiss the wife or she'll be... Oh, me and my wife are great. Babe, come here and give me a kiss so they know we're good. People think you're mad at me or something. All right, let's break it down. Yesterday, I was looking at the 8-hour time frame. We banked to the upside. I gave the trade to my entire trading group. I could see a big pump coming to the upside. I'll tell you why I traded the 8-hour, which I normally don't trade. I'm not a huge 8-hour time frame guy. I actually never trade. I think I've traded it 4 or 5 times in my life. But this RSI was curving up so nicely. It looked like we were going to get a big ripper to the upside, and we did. We ended up doing it. People may say there's 20 minutes or so. The stream was not live, may not mean anything. Look at the charts. We have just lost an entire pump with those 20 minutes. That was a whole lot of emotions to send to your supporters. Sam, kiss the wife or she'll be happy. Yeah, baby. So there you go, man. Dang, man. Dang. That is a pump and dump, dude. But this still has some room to go. I'll tell you what. I'll delete everything and we'll talk about how to manage this market. Number one, the 1 hour's overbought. When the 1 hour gets overbought, expect some downside. Period. I don't like to long overbought 1 hours. Period. So that's one thing off right on the radar. Period, right? Number two, we want to stay above the 200 SMA on the 4 hour time frame. Looks like we're about to go right below it. So getting smashed right now. I don't know. Crypto face opened up a long, I think at 26.6. So I don't know if he took profit quickly, but he would be underwater yet again. Shout out to Face. I love you, brother. I'm just depicting, we were all long or short depending on the charts. So here, we got ourselves in a symmetrical triangle now. That's kind of what's brewing. This is the pattern that I see brewing for Bitcoin, all right? Should end up to the top of the pattern, but we got just smashed back down. 4 hour and the 1 hour both oversold. Expect some downside, right? That's kind of how we're looking. And here we go. What I'm going to do is what I do every day. We're going to go to our 3-day. I don't need the weekly per se. Take away my moving averages. And I look at just price action. Gary is speaking. Oh, God. Where is he? Yeah, man, my staff, man, DMing me does nothing. You got to call my wife, man. Oh, here he is.
Let me say what the public won't have. They won't have somebody really at full force overseeing the market. For companies that want to go public, we won't be able to really review the documents or what's called documents going effective if you want to do an initial public offering, which is so critical to capital formation. We will keep open, I want to say this for the public, we will keep open our tips, complaint, and referral lines. We will keep open comment files so people can still submit comments.
Oh, he's talking about the government shutdown, right?
They're not going to be able to do anything. We won't really have individuals behind the scenes to
perfect for them because
I too am worried about public offerings. I've worked with the opposite side of the aisle.
I thought she was going to hit Ben.ETH with this.
Those who want to do IPOs, but as you explain it, this will have a negative impact, the shutdown, on the ability for IPOs to be initiated. Is that correct?
I think that's just a practical reality, yes.
What happens if a whistleblower comes to the commission with urgent information that could protect investors? Would there be staff to process this? Could the commission deploy resources in response to this information?
Though we will be able to intake, there won't be the usual investigative force of individuals to follow up as readily unless it's an emergency and it's about specifically protection of property.
OP short cooking, baby.
What will happen if there's a major disruption in the capital markets operations and infrastructure during the shutdown? Could the SEC be there to respond?
It's a very good question. I mean, if there were a market event, as you say, senior leadership would be there, but again, we'd be down to a skeletal staff.
And so
Ladies' time's expired. We'll now go to the Vice Chair of the full committee, Mr. Hill of Arkansas, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Gensler, it's good to have you. I want to start out today and talk about equity market structure as a topic. Just yesterday, Congressman Foster and I sent you a letter signed by 16 Democrats and 16 Republicans.
I got a poll here. Do you want to keep watching Gary or the charts? Let me know.
The equity market
I'll do whatever you guys want.
Proposals that the commission
you let me know.
Has initiated. The letter urges you quite simply to stop your rulemaking on that broad set of proposals until you finalize the trade execution data rule, the so-called 605 data rule, and that be done first so that you can rely on that data for an appropriate rulemaking. And this speaks to Mr. McHenry's
answer the poll.
Between the rules.
Answer the poll. That's what it's for.
Contrary to the ranking member, I think there are 50 pending proposals. Many of them interact.
I personally kind of want to hear this.
Confusing and sometimes
you might have to hear what I want to hear.
Each other, and I think this is a classic example. And I think it's particularly true where you're failing to do a rigorous cost-benefit analysis for many of the rules. For instance, the SEC's dealer proposal, which uses the word uncertain 15 times to describe its impact on efficiency and competition for the most important financial market in the world, U.S. Treasuries.
51 to 49. Look
Mr.
at that.
Chairman, I would just say this is not MAGA Republicans that are sending you a critical letter of concern. It's a very bipartisan view, 32 members of this body that think the SEC should reconsider. Would you wait for the Rule 605 data before you finish the other equity market proposals?
I thank you for the letter. I did read it last night around 9:30 when it came in. And it's part of our comment file. We'll take it and think of it very seriously. But I would say in terms of the equity markets, the rules have largely not been updated since 2005.
That may be, but that means that we need to do it in a comprehensive way, in an interoperative way, and make sure we have the right data. So I'll take your short answer as no that it's a comment, but I really urge you to get these equity markets proposals in order and to rely on data and not just emotion or one meme stock event to make policy. Let me change subjects. Let me talk about my favorite kitty cat, which is the CAT, Consolidated Audit Trail. For over a decade, this bad idea has been floating around the Commission since the flash crash in 2010 to collect and store private personal information on every American and every American with a brokerage account at every broker-dealer. In my view, this is a massive overkill. This is unnecessary invasion of privacy. This is a massive new tax on the brokerage account of individual American citizens. And maybe worst of all, considering the 9 years I've been here, this is another massive centralized government database that's going to be hacked, like the IRS, like the CFPB, like OPM. And so I've got real concerns about it, and I continue to express those for Mary Jo White, for Mr. Clayton, and now for you. In fact, you inherited this albatross. Why don't you just bury it and say that we're not going to do the CAT?
Though I inherited, not only from them, but I inherited from my dad, a real allergy to cats, and it's real.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Well, we don't have time for that. I'm reclaiming my time. We can have a cat visit. We can do the kitty part later. Do you know what a targeted exam letter is by the FINRA? Do you know what that is?
I'm familiar with exam letters.
Yep. And do you know what a blue sheet is?
Sir, I'm generally familiar. I don't know where you're headed, but I'm generally familiar.
And so, and you know that all of our markets have regular daily, interday, overnight, global market surveillance on trading.
So bullets
right?
diverters
That's
are the 1 minute.
Feature of
You
all
may
our
get that pumped back up
SROs,
to the
right?
200
You agree with
SMA.
that?
SROs are responsible to do that.
Pull your
sir.
fib.
Yeah, I understand that, and you regulate the SROs. So what I'm suggesting to you is there's no justification for capturing all these trades when you have right now market surveillance data available to Enforcement Division, and you can right now do a sweep exam through a blue sheet, which is where you go to large traders and you look at everybody who traded in Apple. You can get all the PII you want because you have a probable cause for doing that, and that's why CAT
Gary straight out the litter
exceeds
box.
what you should be doing. Why is the blue sheet targeted exam process inadequate for you to do your job?
So I think you raise a good question, but the Consolidated Audit Trail gives the self-regulatory organizations and the SEC a look at those orders and matches up sometimes.
They've got the ability to do that now. They don't need to capture everybody's trade in every retail
It's not a new
brokerage
moon, it's a
account
full
in
moon. Seize the
America.
day.
Mr. Chairman,
Come on,
I yield
man.
back.
It's a
Gentleman
full
yields
moon,
back.
dude.
We'll now
Not a new
recognize
moon.
the ranking member of the Capital Markets Subcommittee, Mr. Sherman of California.
As the chairman points out, it's about capital formation. You're at the nerve center of the world capitalist system, where capital is deployed to operating businesses.
This guy's such
If
a
we
weirdo.
have a shutdown of the government, I think it's already been pointed out by the ranking member that we stop all IPOs in their tracks.
That's horrible.
Does this also apply to companies that are already public but are issuing additional shares? And does it also apply to new bond issuances?
I'm glad to follow up and have staff chat with you. It's more nuanced. It really depends on whether they have filings that they can.
So
go
a few of
effective,
them
but
are sophisticated.
Many would still, many public companies would be foreclosed from doing additional offerings. Others would be allowed. It really depends on the nature of their filings.
So a huge portion of our $100 trillion capital markets are not available to raise additional capital, or a huge portion of the initial capital that would be raised for operating businesses would be blocked. We also, as I understand, as far as providing assurance for the honesty of markets, you'll continue to collect emails as they come in, but you won't be doing any investigations or opening any additional investigatory files, correct?
It's really prescribed and narrow. It relates to a 19th century law called the Inefficiency Act, but we can protect public property, but it's
okay.
Really
So nobody's going to be
narrow
stealing your computers, but you're not going to be. It's going to be the Wild West on Wall Street, all while we're fighting for capital with other countries and other capital market systems, and we put up a sign that says, you know, closed. I can't think of a worse thing we could do to American capitalism. Swing pricing.
How about smothering crypto?
It doesn't
fools.
achieve its purpose. We should want people to invest in mutual funds and diversify and
Into
invest
Bitcoin.
in America. But the swing pricing rule you've put forward has been criticized by a letter signed by the vast majority of Democrats on the Capital Markets Subcommittee, many Republicans, I think the vast majority there, the Consumer Federation of America. It seems to be an unfair rule in that giant players can participate in CITs rather than mutual funds, get the same benefits, not be subject to this rule. Investors will be told you may not get your net asset value. People who live in the Pacific time zone are disadvantaged. Any chance you'll be taking this rule back to the drawing board?
We've got a lot of comments. I'm very familiar with the letter that you and Representative Wagner co-authored. It's really going at a core.
So
feature
Bitcoin pumped
that
last
when
night,
you
and
have
the
a
idea that
mutual
there could have been an
fund, if you
ETF,
redeem in that
or
mutual
he would have
fund,
been
you
more
redeem
bullish,
at
right?
the right price.
He's
so that
hawkish
the
today, so it
remaining
kind of creates a bit of a
shareholders
sell-off,
don't get
in my humble opinion.
dilution.
But the 1 hour and the 4 hour were
It
overbought.
works well in
remember
normal
that.
times, less well in stress times, but we're taking all of these into consideration.
I understand. I'll simply point out that for many years, thousands of mutual funds, all competing for capital, could have adopted this rule, and not a single one of them thought, oh, this is what investors want. This is what will seem fair to investors. You've got the safeguarding rule. I'll simply comment that I think we need a safeguarding rule for
Crypto.
For intangible assets. Has that? I would hope that you would.
Your
if you
time
feel
is
that
up.
Tangible assets such as real estate.
Get yourself a hardware wallet
need a
today.
safeguarding
Treasure
rule that you
hardware
would
wallets,
write
baby.
A separate rule.
Only way to
is
be.
the safeguarding rule that you're writing pretty much structured around intangible assets such as crypto?
No, its genesis, it came from Congress itself. And it's part of Dodd-Frank 12, 13 years ago. There was a new provision that
Dodd-Frank.
The SEC addressed the custody of all customer assets by investment advisors. So it expanded it from just funds and securities to all assets. That was the genesis.
I would hope that the rule would have separate sections and a completely different approach for real estate on the one hand and crypto on the other. Real estate is the title is public and the asset isn't moving anywhere.
It did nothing.
And intangible assets and crypto are very different. I believe my time has expired.
It does have separate sections, but we'll take that under advisement, and it's so good to see Representative.
Gentleman's time's expired. We'll now recognize the gentleman from Oklahoma making his valiant return after tussling with a bull.
Yes, sir.
Happy to have you back, Frank.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I very much appreciate that. And I would note to my colleagues, it has been a long time since I've sat this far down in a committee hearing. But after my interaction with the 1,000-pound bull, I'm just happy to be here. So, with that, thank you. And I have the
Ask
opportunity.
unanimous consent to restore the gentleman's time. We're happy to have you back, Frank.
Thank you. And my opportunity to visit with my old friend from many encounters and many discussions.
Why don't they show the
Before I
guy?
begin my questions,
Like,
I'd
why
like
didn't they
to
show the guy
reiterate
yet?
a few
Like,
points made in
why
the
didn't the camera
bipartisan
show him
letter
yet? What is
that I
going
sent
on?
regarding the SEC
So weird, yo.
proposed
Everyone else
rulemaking
got
on
a full-blown-
security-based swaps and security loans.
They can't
I'd
give
like
him
to enter
a-
that letter into
They
the
can't put the
record.
camera on this guy?
Chairman,
Without objection.
What's going on?
these proposals, I believe, could impair market liquidity while increasing risk
Jesus.
and cost.
What was that all
And
about?
to avoid unintended negative consequences, the SEC should study the data for regulatory purposes before moving forward with public dissemination. This is consistent with the Dodd-Frank
The people have
Act,
spoken.
and I hope the
52% wanna
Commission
watch
will give
Gary. I'm
serious
sorry, everybody. You gotta
consideration
just
to this
hang
approach.
out.
Now, Chairman Gensler, I'd like to focus on the proposed rule branded as the Safeguarding Advisory Client Assets. The proposed rule would impose requirements that are inconsistent with the CFTC rules, and you've spent a good bit of time working on CFTC rules in a past life, and would indirectly give the SEC, I fear, authority over the CFTC's regulated markets. And in addition to being outside of the SEC's authority, this would create the significant problems, I think, across the entire financial markets. Have you consulted with the CFTC
Thank you.
on the impact of the proposed rule? And if so, for curiosity, what was their feedback?
First,
Thank you.
Representative Lucas, it's so good to see you. And your letter with regard to securities-based swaps
Thank you.
not only gained my attention, but there are many people at the SEC. I would say this is Representative Lucas's letter. Will you please take a close look at it?
Thank
On your
you.
topic and your question about safeguarding of assets, the staff has consulted with
Thank
fellow,
you.
regulators at the CFTC about that safeguarding rule, taking their thoughts into consideration. We're some time away. I mean, this was only proposed earlier this year, and it usually takes 12 to 24 months before we even consider adoption. But I think that there are paths forward in terms of the intersection between their Rule 1.25 and these custody rules.
I just think it's imperative that the SEC refrain from applying the proposal to CFTC regulated markets, and I hope that you'll be able to commit to
1
that,
minute is about to
even
dump
if it
further
means
down.
perhaps at
Looks
some
like to
point,
25.9.
the rule entirely. Now,
I'd look for
second question.
25.9.
The Commission has also recently proposed a rule regarding the use of predictive data analytics used by broker-dealers and investment advisors. The proposed rule casts a broad net over what is considered a covered technology. And I quote directly from the rule. A covered technology is defined as an analytical, technological, computational function,
hold a higher low we can
algorithm,
pump, but
model,
it's-
a correlation matrix, or singular method of process that optimizes, predicts, guides, forecasts, or directs investment-related behaviors or outcomes. What a mouthful. The included economic analysis explains that the rule would require a substantial resources to comply with and would prevent smaller firms from entering the market or adopting new technology at all. So, Chair Gensler, could you clarify what technologies are covered, and is the intent of the rule to make it difficult for firms to employ certain kinds of technology?
The intent of the Rule A is to be technology neutral, and it's only about one really core thing, is that when investment advisors or broker-dealers interact with investors, that interaction, that if they're using, as you said, a covered technology, but predictive data analytics, that they continue to put the investor's interest ahead of their own, and they not, in reverse, put the investment advisor's interest ahead of the investing public. That's the core of this proposal.
I'd simply add that given the rapid advances in machine learning and generative AI, the United States should lead the way in the development of innovative technologies that would unlock new economic opportunities, and we should be careful not to be so hostile to new technologies that we stop innovation in its tracks. With that, I'll simply say thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to Mr. Chairman,
I'm going to attempt to long this now with a very small amount back up to the 200 SMA. I opened up a long now, very aggressive long. Big chance I lose the long. But it is a system that I play whenever we get
Well,
this
Frank,
resistance.
we're happy
we
to
get
have
it.
you back. And as a former chair of current chair of one.
They
and
love each other,
former chair of
apparently.
another committee, we honored the old bulls.
And I missed the ranking member, too.
We'll now recognize another ranking member of full committee.
The people
Mr.
have spoken.
Meeks in
It was
New
close,
York
but
for 5 minutes.
53% of the 480 votes, 409 votes.
Thank you, Chairman Gensler, for appearing
Gensler.
before us today. Over the course of the last few months, I've had the opportunity to both ask the SEC's Director of the Division of Economic and Risk Analysis
Everyone got nice glasses.
and the Director of the Division of Investment Management about the private funds rules. In particular, I've asked about revisiting the economic analysis to ensure that it adequately considered the disparate impact on emerging minority and women-owned asset management firms.
Wait, you want your Tom
minority
Crown?
and women-owned businesses?
Who wants Tom Crown?
And historically
You guys want Tom Crown? They want
underinvested
Tom Crown.
communities. Dr. Wachter assured me that the SEC shared my concerns.
I mean, that thing is
and
wrong.
Director Berthistle testified that the economic impact analysis was expanded to look into these concerns. So my question to you is, can you confirm that the economic analysis
No, we made it a little
was
low. We
expanded?
need a better
And if so,
divergence here.
Can you speak to the specific changes that were made in response to the findings from that expanded analysis?
The rule, as other rules do, considers the effect on small businesses. And in this rule, particularly, the economic analysis looked about small businesses, including those that are women-owned and minority-owned, investment advisors running private funds.
So I would like to follow up on that, but I got so many questions I want to ask you because it is really important about to get more details of what those findings were. But I'll ask you more about that in writing and get a response because I want to shift to a related issue that I find to be disturbing. On page 553 of the private funds rules, the Commission seems to seriously suggest that smaller investment advisors, who we know are likely to be predominantly minority and women-owned, consider reducing their assets under management to avoid registering with the SEC to help mitigate the impact of the rule to them. Mr. Chairman, Gensler, we know that minority-owned firms are 3 to 4 times more likely to fund minority enterprises and their portfolio companies. So wouldn't telling these firms to stifle their own growth perpetuate the lack of diverse representation in the industry and therefore decrease the amount of funding going to diverse entrepreneurs?
As the economic analysis noted and you just read, there are often some firms, whether it's in a rule like this or other rules, that are right at a cutoff point, where they might be registered and regulated and not, that they make different choices. But overall, this rule is actually really helpful because it promotes competition and transparency. The biggest fund managers would have to provide greater transparency to their investors, and the smaller asset managers can actually benefit from that greater transparency and competition around the side letters that they might be cutting with large asset pension funds and the like. So it's really a balancing of these economic considerations. It was pro-capital formation. It was pro-investor.
This is just, come
because
on,
it promotes
Gary.
transparency in the middle of the market. That asset managers would have transparency about their fees, their performance, and these so-called side letters that they enter into.
Well, I just have problems with it because it seems to me, again, you're telling these asset managers to not grow, to continue to build where they can do more because of the people that they serve. So it's an issue for me, but of which I'll follow up on.
Shout out to Zero Allegiance.
Under your leadership, the SEC has been, incredibly active, and I'll leave it to others to discuss the pace and the breadth of the Commission's rulemaking. But what I wonder is whether or not the SEC considers how their proposed rules will interact with existing and draft rules during the rulemaking process, particularly when it comes to economic impact of the finalized and pending rules. And do you think there would be any value to doing a whole holistic
he got
analysis.
that money. He got that bread.
We do. In each economic analysis, which often runs between 100 and 250 pages, each of those considers other rules that may have been adopted and adjusts the baseline in each of those analyses.
So look, I got this chart here big, but when I
Now
move
recognize
it, it
gentleman from
affects the
Texas,
chart
Mr.
here. See?
Sessions, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
So if I
and
move this line,
appreciate
it's kinda
the
cool. I
gentleman,
move
my
this line,
friend,
it'll
Mr.
move on
Meeks,
that
for
side.
his conversation with Chairman. Chairman,
Put it
welcome
back.
once again
It's gonna
to the
appear.
committee.
Right
Good to
above
see
that.
you, sir.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I think that there's a lot of happy talk and smiling that takes place from you and your agency as they come up here and they try and
But it ain't
talk
funny.
about
Oh, he went
principles
hard right now.
of-
He's like,
of
but it ain't funny though.
listening to stakeholders and
But it ain't funny, though.
industry participation, and yet I think you're hearing across this committee a wish that we could have a better relationship with you and your entire organization, and we have prodded them, sent letters, done everything nice that you can do, and yet we show up here and we find a way to provide feedback. We'd like to sincerely turn that around. As you know, you and I spoke a couple of years ago about an issue that still is unresolved because the SEC would not even let this firm know what their problem was. And you told me it will take at least 214 days because that's how long it takes us before we're able to turn issues around when your Fort Worth office already knew the answer. And I think it's this kind of action on behalf of the SEC that causes members of Congress to react the way we do. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to turn to an issue. Last November, the SEC announced a massive increase in enforcement fines, $6.4 billion in 22, up from $3.8 billion in 21. And you have launched a regulatory crusade against the financial service industry through enforcement. You've told us that. We see this. Can you please tell me what the money from these enforcement actions, what you've done with it, and where that money goes?
First, sir, if I may, I think the matter you talked to me about a week or so ago, we filed a civil litigated matter against that company. So I think that's all a matter of public record.
Well, then I've learned that now. Thank you. But for the 2 years prior to that, there was attempted to be resolution, and you even blocked that company.
You blocked it.
From their counsel, who was very capable from engaging in that, knowing what that was, to where they could have corrected that.
You didn't
or
care.
Found a way to work
Didn't even
with
let it go.
because it put at least $50 million directly at
Shout out to
risk.
Andrew.
Mr.
Keep it 100,
Chairman,
baby.
Can you explain where the
Love you,
money
baby.
from these enforcement
You hit the NQ
penalties
last night. I know you did,
is
baby.
winding up?
There's a number of places. Much of it goes into what's called fair funds. Congress helped set up a process where the public can.
Thank you for the
actually get
$50
money
super
back,
chat. God bless
those that are
Andrew
harmed
Simone,
get
one of the
money
OG
back.
lifers in the
And
house.
some of it, some of the penalties
We love
and
you,
so
brother.
forth go into
Always
the
and
US
always,
Treasury.
baby.
So that some in fair funds and back to those that have been hurt, but some, of course, also into the U.S. Treasury.
20K incoming.
So
These
the
people are
SEC
stupid.
takes the money in, follows the laws that have been established, and that is,
Yeah, we're funded separately. Of course, we're appropriated, and
know
then we're
that.
funded by fees that are fees on transactions in the.
yes, sir. I
financial
just wanted to make sure that it's as a result of what Congress has established with the fair funds about what they would do with that money. And your testimony today is that's what you've done with the $6.4 billion.
Not all of it, sir.
Well, then please tell me what
We can-
add a comma and add the rest.
Yeah,
You know,
like,
we can follow up with the details because of that six.
I am interested in following up the details, and I would ask that your staff
actually do that.
accept, just like Congressman Lucas sends a staff, and your staff knows, oh, we got a letter from Congressman Lucas. Let's respond very quickly here. I'd like to send you a letter today asking for those details.
Thank you. The
you
actual
would
breakdown
wish.
is a matter of public record. We put it on in our financials each year. I just don't have it memorized.
Well, that's fair. I would not either. Mr. Chairman, we really I think, would like to, on a bipartisan basis,
Like,
up
you're not
here,
helping anybody. Like,
have better interaction with your organization and with you. And I think what you've heard today is another calling on a bipartisan basis for us to do that. We believe if we express our opinion, you should express yours back, not just delay that. I want to thank you for being here, sir, and I will engage you on this matter. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Scott's recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. First of all, Chair Gensler, I agree with our ranking member, Ms. Waters. I believe you're doing an excellent job.
oh, God.
Excuse my cold.
The left is so...
An excellent job at a very difficult and challenging time facing our economy and especially our securities markets. On July 12th, my good Republican friend, Congressman Frank Lucas, and I sent you a follow-up letter with respect to the SEC's proposed rule regarding the impact of publicly disclosing proprietary positions in large security-based swaps above certain reporting thresholds. And specifically, Congressman Lucas and I, we raised concerns with how this move could impair market liquidity and hinder the SEC's core mission to maintain fair and orderly and efficient markets. So my question to you is, first, I know you have previously said you understood the law to require some public availability of this sensitive
We got to divert us to the one. We should pump up to the 200 SMA.
Can you expand?
That is the trade that should
whether
accomplish. That's the one we go for every day.
widespread
This is the trade. Up
public
to the 200 SMA.
access to large SBS positions could in any way impair the ability of market participants to operate their trading business or limit their ability to hedge effectively.
We continue to consider at the staff level and the commission level, not just your comment letter with Representative Lucas, but others about this. But securities-based swaps can be used to basically replicate the positions that are taken in the stock and bond markets, but particularly in the stock markets. And you might recall about 2 years ago there was a family office called Archegos that did that in quite some size. So that's one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons. Just we look at this and we say, Congress gave us this authority. This is one of the remaining authorities we had not addressed from Dodd-Frank. And so we took it up. We put a proposal out about the possible requirements to report to the commission, and then in some cases report publicly these large either credit default swaps or total return swaps that, of course, credit default swaps were at the center of the 2008 crisis, and total return swaps were at the center of this one example, this Archegos example.
Yeah, now let me ask you this question. Do you see any risk in allowing the public to take advantage of this information, for example, by facilitating front-running and copycat trading, which could drive up the costs for all market participants?
I believe we've gotten that comment from a number of commenters. It's taken up in our economic analysis. Excuse me. Taken up in our economic analysis, but it's an important issue of all public transparency. The markets can benefit from transparency, but sometimes there's somebody that had an advantage of the opacity. So when I was on Wall Street, we used to have a saying a little bit at the firm I was at that darkness was our friend. And it was about sometimes opacity helps make more money as a dealer, but it's not necessarily the case that that the markets themselves, economists tend towards the transparency, helps the proper pricing in the markets, and also helps capital formation.
Well, I'm delighted with your presentation. I understand with the little economic and finance that I handle at times, particularly with the stock market. Keep up the good job. Don't get discouraged. We'll get out of this mess in our financial markets.
Gentleman's time.
Thank you.
Well, now
He didn't
recognize
say
the member from
anything.
Florida,
Like,
Mr.
this dude
Posey,
didn't
for
say
5
anything the whole time. Like,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
what was that? Like, what did they vote for that guy to go for? He did nothing for the
Good to
people
see
that
you,
voted for
sir.
him.
In spite
What
of
the heck did he do?
SEC Inspector
Like, what was
General
that?
and GAO
It's insanity.
recommendations, SEC continues to assert that as
I would
an
long
independent
this
agency,
divergence up to the 200
the
SMA.
Commission is not
right?
required to do the same kind of regulatory
It's going to take a while, but it will
analysis
happen.
and cost-benefit analysis as other agencies. Why is the agency so defiant about the suggestion to be accountable as other agencies are?
Yeah, like, why won't we? Why
Actually,
can't we?
sir, we follow the mandate Congress
No,
in
you don't.
1996. Congress put in our statute that we had to do
guy's the worst.
economic analysis. And so we follow that. And then after a number of court cases in the early 20 years ago or so, we updated our guidance to ensure that we followed Congress's mandate. So we do economic analysis, again, sometimes measuring in a couple hundred pages. In every one of our releases, we get feedback from the public, and then we adjust, we modify.
So the Inspector General is wrong? You don't need to do any further analysis?
Well, in fact, we do need to do analysis because Congress mandated it. It's called, we have to analyze the efficiency, the competition, and the effects on capital formation. And in doing so, we lay out an economic baseline, and then we have to look at alternatives to the proposal, reasonable alternatives.
Already
and
up
we look at
3% on the
cost and
trade if you took
benefits,
it.
And so we do all of
Just
that.
saying.
And
Up 166
any
now. It
rules
was up
are
1.3%.
in
though.
conformance
But
with the
fast.
Administrative Procedures Act?
94x leverage
Yes,
long
we do
with 50
that
bucks.
in compliance with the
Just taking it
Administrative
back up.
Procedures Act, but also Congress added these other provisions in 1996. And as I say, after a number of court interpretations of that in 2005 and so forth, we updated how we did this. And we follow guidance that's been in place since 2012. So I think I'm the fourth chair that, we're following the similar guidance for 11 years now.
So does the Commission assess and analyze cumulative economic impacts of the rules that it makes and the interrelationship with other agencies?
We analyze in each one a baseline, as I mentioned. So if, for instance, there was an interaction and we finalize a rule, then we necessarily update the baseline for the next consideration for the world as it exists at that point in time.
All right. In your climate disclosure rule, are you requiring that firms pursuing ESG-directed investments also disclose the risks they face from favorable regulations not materializing or climate subsidies drying up or slowing down?
We're going to pump up to this yellow line. You see it? I'm giving you a live trade right now. I just want to make it clear. Like, we may be covering this, but I'm giving you a live trade. I opened the trade. It's up 5% already had you taken the call. All right? I just want to make it clear.
Opportunities and the risks.
All right?
But I think you
Just want to
did
make it
use
clear.
this
Had
word.
you
It's
taken
about
the call, I got the proof right here.
We're not a
It's up
climate
5%.
regulator. We're really
We're getting into this. This is the
really
system that I teach. I teach this
disclosure-based
every day.
regulator.
You'd be up 5% with me
And
already
thousands
on this
of
move. And we're going to pump up to this 200 SMA
more than
after the
thousands,
liquidations.
representing
It happens
tens of
every day
trillions of
like
dollars of
clockwork.
assets today
Very
are
likely we're
making
going to make a
investment
good gain on this trade.
decisions.
All
I'll
right?
share a
The probabilities
statistic
are with us because I've studied this for years.
Russell
I'm giving you the
1000,
sauce. The trade is now up
top 1,000 companies
14%.
in the US, 81%
14% you would have made had you
climate
listened.
risk
And again, you can't do what I tell you to do,
57%
but,
disclose
you know.
their greenhouse gas, scope 1 and scope 2. And so what we're
Why do they
trying to
do
do
that?
is just try to bring some comparability to that.
Now we're up
in a sense to
16%
for
on the trade.
investors, but also to avoid some greenwashing, frankly. So bring some comparability to that which is already happening.
16% on the trade already.
Based
all
on
right?
your
I'm giving you live trades
which
while
your
we're covering Gary
proposed
Gensler. I want to make this
rules
very
most
clear.
vulnerable to the
I went over, and
questions
again, you don't do what I tell you to
West
do. I'm not a
Virginia
financial advisor over
versus
here,
EPA.
but hey.
We really do everything we can to stay within the laws as Congress
Still
has
up
passed it
11%.
and how courts interpret them. We're
And I
familiar
gave you the
with
trade last night,
case,
and I
the
sold my
Supreme Court
trade.
Case. It's the
I
law of the
took
land
profits.
that you mentioned, and we take a very close look at that to ensure that when we finalize rules, it's
We
within
get into
the
this
laws
yellow
and how the courts
moving
interpret
average.
it.
Once we stay above the
Are
50,
you
we go.
trying to resolve any of those major questions at this time?
Well, I would broaden it out, sir. It's like any time the Supreme Court speaks to our broadly the administrative state's authorities, we take a look at that, and we take a look at every comment we receive from the public to stay within our authorities.
Gentleman's time's expired.
Thank you.
Stop loss for me is
Now
the whole
recognize the
position.
gentleman from
I put
Missouri,
50
Mr.
bucks. I'm willing to get liquidated
Thank you, Mr.
at
Chairman.
26,680.
Thank you.
I put 50
Chairman
bucks.
Gensler,
I'm willing to
being
lose the
here
whole
today.
position, or I'm willing to take the gain. That's how I
One of
play
those,
this.
people who believes that there is such a thing as climate change, and the scientists.
Dude, you have 5 minutes,
I agree
dude.
with the scientists.
Like, you only have so much time to talk, man. Like, and these people voted for you to go there. You're wasting their time. Like, if you don't show up and get it done,
40 years.
think about it. He got voted in, and now he sits there and goes, come on, dude. You got 5 minutes to ask your questions. They should all be regular to go, and you should hit. You should do this job properly. People have voted for you to do this. Wasting time.
Temperatures that we've
Sorry, I'll be
had
quiet.
since modern
Jesus, Mary.
keeping of
Sorry.
the
Gosh
weather,
dang. You know, I'm only using the
temperatures,
Lord's name in vain.
and,
Apologize for that. But come on, man.
I'm from Kansas City, Missouri. The Missouri is the second longest water system in North America.
Thank you for the history lesson. This is great. Do
waterheads
you have a
up
question
in
for Gary
Montana.
Gensler so you can help the people that have voted you into office?
Through Missouri and then meets up with the Mississippi.
Jeez Louise, man. Do your job, man.
St. Louis. It goes through 7 states, and the only reason I'm mentioning that is that we are experiencing all kinds of events along the Missouri River system. We had droughts, floodings are becoming more volatile, and weather events are becoming more extreme.
I don't drink
impacting
coffee.
The Missouri River.
I'm an Aries with the most energy you've ever
and
seen. Sun Aries.
This becomes economical in the sense that the low water levels,
Get him, Sam.
which are reaching sometimes record lows, disrupts business. We do a lot of barge trafficking on the Missouri and the Mississippi, and
Sure
that is
you do.
being disrupted.
Sure you
and
do.
so the crisis puts into question our viability and long-term dependability. So I was pleased that in March last year that the SEC released the proposed rule to require public companies to make a variety of
Hello?
quantitative and qualitative disclosures regarding climate-related risk.
Oh, is there a live stream going
Is
on?
there any company,
I'm falling
any
asleep
kind of
over here.
economic interest in the United
Oh my
States
God.
that you think would be
I just like
immune
want to take a nap.
to
Jesus. Is this trading?
immune from climate risk as we are
This guy's putting me to
dealing with this-
bed, dude. He's ruining the stream. Yo, you're ruining the stream, man. Come on, get off the camera, man.
as we should.
Like, you're ruining my
but
stream. Like, people
is
don't
there-
want to
are
watch
there
this
any
anymore. We lost
exemptions
15 people because you wouldn't start
that you
talking.
can think of that would companies.
You have
corporations
5
would not be
minutes to say
impacted,
something,
or
bro.
that are not being impacted today.
Gary's like,
Again, I understand your views. We're not a climate regulator.
I understand.
We're just, it's a matter of investors making investment choices. And for some companies, investors are getting disclosures, and we're trying to bring some comparability to that disclosures. Some companies, it's viewed as material, and some companies it's not. That's an important distinction, of course. But there's so many different sectors and so many different industries.
This is going to the
in this
200,
country,
baby.
And we're merit neutral.
so far, so good on the
We're not
divergence call.
disclosure neutral. And right now, 80+% of the top 1,000 companies are already making disclosures. It's really on our responsibility to bring some consistency and comparability for investors to get decision-useful information.
Yes, I'm not suggesting that you are the EPA or, some kind of climatologist.
50%, thank you, God bless you. You did it, you pulled the trigger.
I want to make sure that the SEC continues to measure the impact through its disclosures of what's going on dangerously.
Look at this guy. Why are you forcing us to listen to this? The highlights of someone interested happen.
I would say
Because
this,
people like to see my interactions to the people live, guy. That's what they're here for. They're not just here for the charts. They actually like me. Robert. All right? They like this crazy. They like how I talk. They like how we do this over here. Huh? They like how I talk about it over here.
Already receiving. So that's what we're focused on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman's time's expired. We'll now
Of course it
recognize
is.
the gentleman from Missouri, the chair of the National Security Subcommittee.
All
Mr.
right, we
Lukemeyer
can move
for
on,
5
man.
minutes.
We're here
Thank you,
for
Mr.
you,
Chairman.
Sam. Yeah, some people actually like me, Robert. They don't just want to make money off the charts. Some people actually care about me, Robert. If you can believe that.
Rule number 192, prohibition against conflicts of interest in certain circumstances, and our concerns about the potential treatment.
I love
of
you, not
mortgage
like you.
insurance
I love you too. I'll 50% on the long and took profits on the short for 300%. Let's go, Sammy. All while I'm at work welding. My man banging on them. No excuses. I love it.
That we're requesting a clarification of the language that's in your rule. So we're disappointed with the interpretation of our letter, which is pretty plain from the standpoint we'd like to have an answer. But the mortgage insurers are a significant source of private capital in the housing and finance system, and these transactions are an important tool to reduce taxpayer risk, exposure, and cost. So question number 1, do you agree that federal policy should encourage more private capital in the housing market, especially when it involves well-capitalized and highly rated entities?
Well, I think there are other agencies that...
Sam for president. Look at that. They want me to run, baby.
Our role at the SEC is facilitate...
We love you, Sam. Sam for president 2032, baby. I need some time.
$11 or $13 trillion mortgage securitization.
God bless you, Techno Tribe.
What we are trying to do in that market.
Shout out to my lifers, baby. 811 strong and alive, baby. Yeah, let's go to 1,000. Let's keep hitting the likes, keep hitting the likes, keep hitting the likes, keep hitting the likes, keep hitting the likes. We have 347 likes. Let's get the likes all the way up to the watches. Let's go, baby.
Reinsurance.
1,000 episodes and counting. Boom, boom, boom. We don't stop.
Reduction, well, the spread of risk, and then, of course, the reduction.
Let's go.
The question's pretty simple. Would you support something like that?
Sorry, I'll be quiet now.
I think that if I understand the question, that mortgage originators rely also on mortgage insurance. That's an important part of it. That I agree. That's an important part of the market.
Okay. In our letter, we say that the rulemaking may unintentionally prohibit private insurers from procuring reinsurance via the capital markets through these MINs, which would negatively impact home buyers, lenders, and taxpayers. Are you considering changes to the rule to clarify the treatment of mortgage insurance-linked notes?
Without prejudging any adopting release, we're considering all the comments, including yours, but these individual letters you referenced.
Gary's still beating the charts, but the second you guys flip, it's charts. You guys are in control of the stream. Just remember, here's the poll.
Underwriters and sponsors of certain mortgage securitizations.
I use every time frame for the 200, depending. The bigger one with more weight, but I use it on all time frames.
The letter should not be canned with the comment letters. It's a request for you to clarify what you're trying to accomplish here, and the letter to point out what we need clarification of. So we'd appreciate a response. Thank you for that. I also sit on the Chinese Select Committee, and as a result of my position there and my chairmanship of the National Security and Illicit Financing Subchair here, in 2022, the PCAOB inspection reports of mainland China and Hong Kong accounting firms, which audit U.S.-listed Chinese companies, were scathing and a reminder that financial statements produced by the CCP-controlled companies should never be trusted. Both reports showed unacceptable rates of Part 1-.A deficiencies, which are deficiencies so large that PCAOB staff believe the audit firm failed to obtain sufficient audit evidence to support its work on the public company's financial statements, essentially the audits were useless. Is it correct that under the Holding Foreign Companies
Audits were absolutely useless.
Accountable Act, these two firms, which failed so spectacularly, will not be inspected again by the PCAOB for another 2 to 3 years?
I'm not familiar enough with the PCAOB's rotating schedule.
BT
but it
Slinger,
is
these are super
accurate
chat
that
questions
when
that I'll
the
address later
PCAOB
if you send a
goes
super
to
chat. Otherwise, I
inspect
probably
an
would forget them
auditing
with the
firm
chat.
In any country, they sometimes aren't able, they don't have the staff to go in on an annual basis.
Well, you know, the premise is correct there, where they only have to do it every 2 or 3 years. And so Mr. Sherman and I have introduced a piece of bipartisan legislation that require them to have an annual audit. These are very, as we saw in 2020, there were 1,000 companies on the exchange. Now it's down between 250 and 300. A lot of them are shell companies, and when we're threatened an audit, suddenly they disappeared. The funneling of our capital to Chinese companies and / the Chinese government and Communist Party has got to stop. And so we would appreciate your support for something like that. And just a quick comment, yes or no?
Look, I think it's really important. If somebody wants to issue stock in the U.S., they need to comply with their laws.
Gentleman's time's
Particularly
expired.
China, that's very important.
Thank you very much. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Connecticut, Mr. Himes, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for joining us today, Mr. Chairman. I want to talk with you for 3 minutes or so about my ongoing efforts to codify insider trading into law, but I do want to take a minute here, since we're on the verge of a government shutdown, to just see how that affects you and your organization. It's sort of taken for granted around here that a shutdown is going to occur because my friends on the other side of the aisle can't find the coherence to pass a rule on the floor, much less do what we know needs to be done to avoid a shutdown, which is to pass a bipartisan continuing resolution. The Senate has figured that out. They're working on that. We'll figure that out eventually. In the meantime, to demonstrate the importance of doing that, we are going to shut down the government because of some MAGA extremists. Now, we get asked all the time about the very visible stuff. We'll be treated in the next couple of weeks to the sight of 19-year-old Marines and sailors lining up at food banks because they don't know that they're getting paid. SBA will be shut down. They will not be able to lend to small businesses, and those small businesses may go under.
You know the country's in millions of dollars debt, right?
Stuff, but
you get that, right?
You lead an organization that has an awful lot of people who could be making a lot more money at a bank or at a law firm who are going to be told that they're inessential, who may be furloughed. So let me just give you a minute or so here. I'm curious, even though it's not going to make headlines, what would a shutdown do to morale and capability inside the Securities Exchange Commission?
It's a remarkable dedicated staff, but we're looking at probably 90 to 93% of our staff will be furloughed. So we'll be down to skeletal 7-8% of our staff. In terms of what it would do for morale, I think that history shows, because we had one of these in 18 and 35 days at that point in time, that it's hard on people. It's hard because they're not getting a paycheck. It's hard because, as you rightly say, they can get jobs at law firms and elsewhere and go, and they're just really dedicated public servants. In terms of the markets, I would say if a company were deciding to go public or raise offerings, they'd want to go effective before Friday if they're ready to.
Looks like we're going to get my 200, man. It's this old trick. It just seems to work.
Subliminal state where they
takes time, though. You have to have so much patience in the trade. Such a pain in the butt, but it plays out.
Let me redirect you for a second.
Like 90% of the time, this trade will play out.
Companies raising capital, but
let's see if we can get to this 200. Then the meeting can end. We can get back into altcoins and have some fun, all right?
The organization is full of people who are out there prosecuting fraud, who are stopping insider trading. Are we going to see, if there is a meaningful shutdown, fraud go unprosecuted, insider trading? You won't have the capacity to address these things, which hurt the American public, correct?
Yeah.
You mean Nancy
While
Pelosi?
Somebody can still file a tip.
You mean like Bill Gates selling the bottom and the top of Pfizer?
To really review it.
Come on, man. Let's get real.
Okay, speaking of insider trading, Mr. Chairman.
Insider trading is a good question.
I want to just briefly discuss with you something I've worked on for 7 years right now, which, as you know, is trying to define insider trading in law. It's not defined in law today, as you know, and as a result, we have court-made law, Newman, Solomon, Martoma, overturning each other, creating a great deal of uncertainty, prosecutions being overturned, convictions being overturned, a great deal of uncertainty. I'm a believer in this idea that if we're going to send somebody for jail, we should be very clear about why we are doing that. So I'd love to get a minute or so from you, Mr. Chairman. Where are we?
8% in the trade, baby.
Would we benefit from
We
a
got you, baby.
codified
We got you.
statute on insider trading?
Got
law?
you.
Would that remove some of the
94x leverage with
remove
balls
some
of
the chance
steel,
that the courts
getting
will
into the 1
overturn
minute on bullish
your traditional
divergence.
activity?
Can you do this? We can teach you. We can teach you how to do it.
We've had the benefit.
You
at
won't
the
believe
agency
what kind of trader you'll
robust, as you
become
said,
when
largely
we're done with
court-made
you in
law
my
from
trading
the
group.
1980s
You
on.
won't believe it.
You referenced some cases.
The trades you will
in the
make, you're
last
like,
6-7 years.
I never thought this possible.
But I think we've
But it is, my
provided
friends, it is.
You and other members, if I remember, technical assistance on a legislative package that you had last year, if I recall, that almost made it into the NDAA, if I recall. But
Yo, it's me from Twitter. I shared
again,
my Twitter
think that
chart
we
with you.
have
Thanks, man.
good, robust
I appreciate it, bro. I got
technical
25,000 follows on
assistance, I
Twitter. I
recall.
try to follow everything. I can't see every message, but I'll check it out.
supported that bill. It supported the what you were trying to achieve.
But ideally, and I think you gave us this technical assistance, if we could preserve those authorities that are legacy authorities, if you will, but if we could.
That was the key, that we didn't want to in any way lose the authorities that all the way up to the Supreme Court that we had.
Right, right. But I see you nodding. If we could codify a definition of insider trading and reduce some of the risk of overturning case-made law.
I'm open-minded to all good ideas. I'm not just like, I don't hate on that's not the worst idea ever, right? That's not the worst idea. Like actually define it so they can't just do whatever they want. Let's define it. Like, what is it?
And somehow undo some of the really good law that's in place.
Gentleman's time's expired.
So we have good law. We don't want to change that.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes yourself.
Thanks, Gary.
for 5
You're
minutes.
so nice. Everyone loves you.
Chair Gensler, while you were a professor at MIT, you spoke at length about how technology could be used to democratize finance. In fact, in a lecture quoted in a podcast entitled Paying It Forward with FinTech with Professor Gary Gensler, you stated, and I quote, "What I was drawn to at MIT was this sense that maybe we can democratize capitalism a bit more.
Sound like such a good
that
dude
we can
back
use
then, right?
technology to make finance more inclusive and more accessible to many more
Like
millions
cryptocurrency
of people
and
in our
blockchain?
country and many more hundreds of millions of people around
No.
the globe.
We don't want to do that.
Now, sir, as chair of the SEC, you've put forward a predictive data analytics proposal.
You're a completely different person.
That jeopardizes
It's like he had a
the
personality
innovation and
disorder, right?
technology that's made
I agree.
investing available to millions more
Impossible.
Americans than ever before. I'm confused at which Gary Gensler, the American public, should believe. The academic version, who spoke glowingly about the power of technology to help more investors participate in U.S. and global capital markets, or the SEC version, who apparently thinks all use of any technology by broker-dealers and investment advisors is inherently conflicted and firms should just stop using technology altogether. Chair Gensler, could you please briefly explain this change in your views?
I thank you for the question, a clever question. It's the same Gary Gensler. It's not my identical twin brother, Rob.
Gary, what happened?
And I believe technology is so transformative. I think artificial intelligence, machine learning is so transforming this decade and so forth. I think robo-advisors and brokerage apps, whether they're using these new technologies or some of the older predictive data analytics, just to stand by that basic concept that the investor is first, not the investment advisor is first. That's all.
We agree there, and this proposal fails to acknowledge the already existing and well-functioning SEC regulations, such as Regulation Best Interest, Reg BI, and the fiduciary standard that protects investors. I would really urge you to withdraw this regulation, as we already have this in place. And during your last appearance in front of this committee, I asked you, sir, if you were planning to rewrite Regulation Best Interest, Reg BI, and you said that it was not currently on your agenda. However, the Commission's proposal on conflicts of interest associated with the use of predictive data analytics effectively rewrites Reg BI by holding broker-dealers and investment advisors to a higher standard of conduct and conflict neutralization than Reg BI. Were you intentionally withholding your plans to supersede Reg BI, sir, with a new proposal when you testified in April?
What a weirdo.
I feel the same as I did in April. I think this doesn't change regulation best interest or the fiduciary interpretation. This does.
BCH is just going to follow Bitcoin Man to the T.
And an important area around using predictive data analytics. It's if a function, an optimization function, it's a little bit of a math thing, but if the math is basically putting the investment advisor's interest ahead of the investors, if it's making a recommendation or it's giving a nudge, a behavioral nudge to steer somebody somewhere, therein lies a conflict. That's what we're trying to do.
It's too broad.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't even know what technology would be
what
applied
are you
here.
talking about?
And at the core,
what the
Reg
like that's
BI
insane. Do you guys hear what he just
standard,
it's so open-minded. He wants to be able to robo you.
That is already there. You are now superseding that, and it's not just duplicative. It throws out.
Thank you, Shibanucci. We love you.
The fiduciary rule in Reg BI. So I again would encourage you, and I think we have bipartisan support to withdraw this rule just as soon as possible. And let me just ask you this question, since I have a limited time. How many staff, because this was a question I sent you that we haven't received response.
You never told us.
How many staff with the Division of Trading and Markets and Division Investment Management and the Division of Economic and Risk Analysis were actively involved in drafting the predictive data analytics proposal?
I don't have a number, but I would say that generally speaking.
Do they have advanced degrees in computer science, data science, or engineering, sir?
A number of them have advanced degrees in economics and computer science, but I don't know how many of them do.
Well, I've sent you a list of questions. I'd love to have those answers. My time's expired. The chair now recognizes
She's
the,
a no BS person.
gentleman
Like,
from
this guy's
Illinois,
playing
Mr.
games.
Foster,
She's like,
4 or
come
5
on, man.
minutes.
Like, I made the kids
Thank you,
peanut butter
Madam
jelly
Chair.
sandwiches they didn't eat.
And I want to thank our witness for staying up until 9:30 p.m. to accept and analyze the just-in-time delivery of our bipartisan letter with 16 Republicans and 16 Dems on it that French Hill and I prepared. I want to make sure that you understand what the meaning of that letter is. It is not that you should stop working on the market reforms in parallel with 605 upgrades. Our intention is that you actually get the 605 done so that you have upgraded reporting of quality of order execution and so on.
Don't worry, I'll get to the
So
analysis.
you
We'll
have a
break
look
it
at the
down.
data
It's going to be a long
and
live.
Finalize the market reforms and watch, hopefully, the quality of order execution improve. And so just the meaning of the letter is to sequence those in that way, but not to cease all work on
And this
planning
then
so
makes
on
an ascending triangle. We watch this every day.
market
The
structure.
same thing happens
So just
every day.
please read
Now you
that
make an
at the end of
ascending
the
triangle.
first paragraph carefully.
Right? And
one of the reasons it
can
was
we
late
get
is
to the
we did a certain
200?
amount of wordsmithing to get
Most
that
of the
right.
time you do. Like
And I also
90%, but
want
you
to
don't
comment
always.
a little bit on,
Now we
you
watch
were
this
on-
ascending
it was
triangle,
on your
okay?
shift when we had the flash crash.
Sorry to
right?
talk over him.
You were you were running the CFTC during the flash crash, and I remember when we had a hearing maybe 4 days afterward. The CFTC had the night of the flash crash 30 people with the entire trading history with that on their laptops figuring out what the heck happened. And 4 days later, the SEC, which did not have a consolidated audit trail-like structure in place, was still collecting the data to figure out what the heck happened. And so I think that is why we should not lose sight of.
He didn't even care. He
making
kept his
the
tile like
consolidated
whatever. Like
audit
he didn't even
trail,
straighten it.
a
He's
success.
just like whatever. Like it's cool.
Do it.
It's
And
good
I
enough.
think that's a separable discussion for
He's
the
laid back.
beneficial owner and cybersecurity issues there. And in particular, last time, one of the ways that I raised with you last time we were in front of our committee here, I asked you about the possibility of actually using the consolidated audit trail to simplify much of the reporting requirements under Rule 605, so that instead of making it a requirement of every one of the bazillions of companies that would have to do it, that you'd simply use the fact that the consolidated audit trail has the information necessary to make a public report on of quality.
This is a
of
banana
order
hammock.
execution
This
for
guy.
different brokerages. That you could simply have either FINRA or some competent.
You guys make me
private
laugh, man.
subcontractor
You
like
funny people out here.
S3 or similar.
Banana hammock.
Just have them write a piece of software that provides this report based on the consolidated audit trail. This would actually relieve the regulatory burden on a lot of the market participants.
Use
and get
blockchain. It's an
something
audit
that
in
was
itself.
guaranteed
Exactly.
to
It's already
be,
done. It's right there. It gets
apples to
audited every
apples,
second.
Well-defined
Crazy, right?
comparison of the
the quality of order execution. Have you had time since we spoke on this to have put thought into that idea and see if that's a useful way to simplify and speed up the 605 reporting?
One, I want to compliment you on your excellent memory of 13 years ago, and that when I was.
Oh, Gary!
It was
so much fun.
It was the very next morning that the CFTC had all that information in the SEC.
Let's get real, man.
In terms of, you're raising an idea as to whether the consolidated audit trail could be used for data about the quality of order execution. And
no need for more time. I'm reading your tweets here. Got back into Pepe at 686. Shout out to Wiggins of Hot Fire.
Through that in and of itself would raise costs and benefits as well. And as everybody has encouraged us to always look at cost and benefits, I would just say,
hey, I'm going to eat a sock, all right, everybody? I got to eat a sock. I'm going to be back on the camera later. I'm going to eat a sock. My name's Jordan. Jordan camera. All right, there's your best Jordan.
Right, but then you have to make sure it's an apples-to-apples comparison. They will have an incentive to not quite, if there's an ambiguity, they will resolve it.
All right, Krunk, see, I gave you a Jordan there.
You're going to have some of your employees looking over that. Whereas if you just
where are the bears? Oh, here's a bear. The bears are coming. The bears are coming.
Doing that already, or
look at all the bears, all those big old bears.
Piece of software, make it public,
that's Jordan.
Run that piece of software in the consolidated.
I haven't watched him in months, man. I've been so busy.
Understand exactly what numbers.
I literally haven't watched one of his live streams in a long time.
The one thing is the consolidated audit trail does not capture and compare, the orders, like you bought something on a Tuesday, or you put an order in, and here's the actual quality. So it would be bolting more requirements, I think, onto the consolidated audit trail, but we can follow up and just talk further.
I think it actually...
Chilling at work, make it 40%. Thank you, Sam. God bless you, brother.
The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Barr, for 5 minutes.
Chairman Gensler, have you ever spoken to Senator Menendez about the Security and Exchange Commission's Director of Enforcement, Gerbera?
The guy that got all those...
No.
Of course not.
On May 20th,
just got caught
2021,
with all that money.
Calendar notes a call with Senator Menendez. What was discussed during that call, if you can remember?
I can't remember that.
2 years ago, sir, but if I recall, there was some discussion about possible disclosure by public companies of political contributions.
Well, you hired Mr. Grual as the SEC's Director of Enforcement shortly after that May 20th call. Are you aware of the glowing statement in support that was put out by Senator Menendez praising your hire?
I thank you for letting me know that, but until you told me, or until today.
Well, I'm deeply concerned about this, and I'll be following up with your office with additional questions.
I think he's a little too much on that, right? I get it, though.
Mr. Chairman, I really liked your
you want to bark up the right tree,
testimony.
Don't waste
and
your
you're
time.
right. We are blessed with the largest, most sophisticated, most innovative capital markets in the world, but we cannot take this for granted. Even a gold medalist must keep training. With all due respect,
Amen.
Mr. Chairman, if the U.S. capital markets are a gold medalist, you are the Tanya Harding of securities regulation because you are kneecapping the U.S. capital markets with the avalanche of red tape coming out of your commission. On your climate disclosure rule proposed,
not only is he hitting us, he's hitting the stocks and
the SEC
and
is
other companies
neutral,
too. It's not
that
just
your
crypto,
focus on
baby.
consistency
You
and
can see.
comparability of disclosures, not the merit of the investment. Sir, that is just not believable. The requiring scope 3 emissions will lead to wildly inaccurate and immaterial disclosures.
Nancy Kerrigan, bro. I was a kid. Those were my first memories.
They would also unfairly and inaccurately portray companies as major polluters that are in reality have very low carbon footprints.
Messed up.
Let's be honest, the agenda here is not to provide investors with relevant information, but instead to redirect capital away from fossil energy. Your proposal would discriminate against fossil energy, and you've repeatedly claimed that these disclosures are rooted in investor protection, but the largest U.S. energy exchange-traded fund is up 15% over the last 3 months. It's near its highest level in 9 years. How is it protecting investors to deter investment in profitable companies?
Wow.
This is not doing that, with all respect. All it is about trying to bring some comparability to disclosures being made. We're not a climate agency.
I know. I've heard you say this.
We're really not.
But let's be honest. We know what's going on. We know what's going on. You're trying to scarlet letter fossil energy.
We're not.
I know
Not,
you
sir.
say you're not, but we got the joke. Everybody knows what you're doing.
Yeah, like stop
You're
saying
trying
you're
to
not.
redirect capital away. You're trying to discriminate against fossil energy, notwithstanding your protests. Most American investors find all of this Scope 3 emissions nonsense and immaterial. It's immaterial. I know institutional investors
China going to
talk
keep
about this,
throwing it up
but
in the air.
This is about an agenda
India going to keep
to
throwing up in the air.
discriminate against fossil energy, which is profitable. That's not protecting investors. That's hurting investors. It's steering them into less diversified, lower performing funds.
Definitely.
Let me move on to the perfect storm of regulations. Let me just move on real quick. Have you consulted with Vice Chair Barr about the Basel III endgame and the interplay between what you're doing on capital markets regulation and what's happening in commercial real estate? I'm very concerned about this because Basel III will increase the cost of credit, diminish lending capacity, and undermine the role that banks play in lending and financial intermediation in commercial real estate. Have you talked to the Fed about how this interacts with conflicts of interest and securitization rule, Rule 15C211, private funds, custody rule, and others? Because I'm really worried that Basel III endgame and all of your regulatory proposals would lead to a death by 1,000 cuts for commercial real estate when
So we got the bounce, but we couldn't get above the previous resistance. That may cap us here. We could fall out of this to the downside, make a lower low, and then, you know.
And it's not just about
got to break above this resistance.
From 3% to now
26,346.
It's now the fact that Basel III and then all of the non-bank activity is going to be sidelined as a result of the interplay between Basel III and your regulations.
We have ongoing conversations with the Federal Reserve about a number of our rules, but they have the lead on Basel III. That's not something.
Shout out to you in the shower with the baby. I love taking showers with my baby. They're so cute.
Gentlemen, time's expired. I'd ask you to submit the answer to for the record.
The interplay is important. Yield back.
The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from Ohio, Ms. Beatty, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Chairman Gensler, for being here today. I am going to get to a question that I'd like to ask you on the proposal regarding predictive data analysis.
These people spend more time getting dressed than actually working for the people that voted for them. It looks to me. They spend more time getting dressed than working for the people that vote for them.
Kneecapping. I want to ask you about the shutdown because I think my Republican colleagues are kneecapping the American people and those who serve this country and those that we took an oath to protect. And certainly, at least the last 5 government shutdowns have happened under Republican governorship. So you represent this large organization, and if there was a government shutdown, would that grind the SEC to a halt, yes or no, in your opinion?
We'd be skeletal staff.
And does that mean if there was a shutdown with your approximately 4,600 employees, you would be left with maybe only 400 employees who were not furloughed?
That's correct.
And those remainder would be furloughed without pay?
Yes, that's correct. Even those that are working would be without pay.
Right. And these are hardworking American people with families and children that would considerably, in my word, be kneecapped by my Republican colleagues who have so much concern about what we're doing. And so would that have some effect on the registration statements for new users and officers?
She put you to sleep, too.
Of securities and
every time.
Surveilling.
I know all these people now. We've watched so many of these
operations
meetings.
Of capital markets.
We know all of
I
them.
think you could say largely the initial public offering market would be shut down.
And would you say investors would be vulnerable to fraud and businesses will be deprived of their opportunity to access capital markets?
It's going to be tough.
I would say that while we'll have a skeletal staff, it will be hard for us to oversee the markets.
And that's what you're charged with doing. Like, we're responsible for keeping the government open, and protecting the American people. You probably would agree with that. I'm not going to ask you to answer that. So now let me get on to my question after I feel a little renewed to letting the American people know.
Don't call people pigs,
that
man.
while
That's
we're
rude.
Here, we can ask
I
all
would never
kinds of
call. I would
questions,
never
but
say
if
that
we
about
wanna talk
somebody.
about,
That's not cool, guys.
economic
Remember, when you're
analysis, if
negative
we
to
wanna
somebody else, you are negative to yourself. You must live in love for everybody. Anyone that just what you said, that's horrible. What you just said.
But with that said,
I'm sorry, I had to
gonna
point
give you
that out. I would never say like that.
to,
Never call
talk
somebody a
about
pig. That's
this
horrible.
Proposal that
Horrible.
we've heard a lot about. I understand that the proposal.
I actually like pigs.
currently
I'm just.
very
I'm just. I'm just.
broad
No, I was
in
being
scope,
serious.
covering the range of
I just had to-
investor interactions.
I just had to. I want to make you laugh. You know?
Through
But in all honesty, I was
firms,
being serious.
Public websites. There is concern that it could even encompass financial education tools for investors.
Stick on us.
And it could cover things such as an application that analyzes an investor's future retirement assets by changing the inputs for different mixes of assets. Can you address?
Trust
the
me, I don't have to hold
concerns or take
contempt.
the rest
I
of my
build
time
beautiful people.
to talk about this proposal.
I'd
so
rather instead of
we can
hating, I build
understand
beautiful
it better.
people.
Well,
Those beautiful
this is-
people will take over
one
the
thing I'd
world
say, this
over
hearing
time.
comes at a timely moment because
making
the
a life for
comment
Army one step
period
at a
is
time.
open until October 10th on this particular rule.
Jamie, man.
But this rule really is just has a basic concept that if you're engaging with investors, that those investors' interests come before that of the investment advisor or broker-dealer. And if you're using predictive data analytics to determine how to nudge them or guide them.
Oh, come
should be
on.
Not putting your interest. Look, I in my downtime, I like to watch romantic comedies and watch on streaming apps.
We don't
The
care.
streaming app figures out
Nobody
that I'm like a
cares
rom-com
what you want to
guy,
watch
which I
on
am.
when you're home alone.
And they're doing
Like Macaulay
it because they
Culkin.
make more money because
Get
I
a
watch
life.
the streaming app more.
If you want to come over, we could
But
watch
in finance,
Cary Grant.
If you're doing it and you're nudging somebody to trade more and churn up their hard-earned assets, or to nudging them to margin or options trading or higher fees on a robo-advisor, and it's not in their interest, but it's in the investment advisor's interest, therein lies a conflict. That's what we're trying to address.
Thank you.
Gentlelady's time.
Try.
Lady yields
The
back,
word try is
and
the
the chair
worst
now
word in the
recognizes
English
the gentleman
language.
from
People that
Texas,
use it, I'm weary of.
Mr. Williams. for
Usually they don't
5
get things
minutes.
done.
Thank you,
They try
Chair.
to get a lot of things done, but they don't get them
The
done.
SEC's recent climate rule proposal was 500 pages of mandatory disclosure.
We told you when the dump would stop. That's one thing I'm really good at. You come to this channel,
Data and climate
and you will see when the dump stops. I just want to make it clear. Like, you come to this channel, and you be in a trade, and you're like, I don't know, and I find the divergence for you. We calm the quell, and then I give you the pattern, and you start to kind of take a deep breath, right? I do this all the time for you guys every day you come here. Just want to make it clear, we calm you down.
climate risk management strategies.
We also
This
show you where the
proposal is a major
market, and
concern
when the
for
market has
business owners
finished
back in
its
my
dump for the
district who are
moments.
worried. I'm a small business owner also, about the SEC's recent push to implement costly environmental, social, and political
I like the
regulatory
tie.
requirements. They're not even relevant to the company. So the SEC's
Company.
proposed
I
climate
like how the Southern
requirements
side,
will
with their
cost
company.
companies
Company.
millions of dollars
With
to
the company.
ensure they are properly complying with these burdensome rules. This will force business owners to hire more lawyers and compliance officers.
This is a 50-50
rather than
pattern that
investing
can go
back
either
in
way.
their
We need to
employees
hold
and
this channel and get a
operations
bounce.
to help their businesses
The
grow
200 gets
and
lower and
bring
lower
more
each
in
time, but
revenue, and I've
eventually you
seen
will
that
touch
happen
it.
in my business. So businesses are already struggling to operate within tight margins, and an increase in compliance costs could be their tipping point. And on top of that, the Scope 3 emissions disclosure will direct companies to speculate on the emissions output for their suppliers and products, which require substantial information to order to get a proper estimate. So this could lead to smaller businesses being left out due to how difficult it is for them to obtain this complex information. And the SEC crusade is extremely out of touch and exceeds their intended missions and statutory authority. So the SEC needs to stop their abuse of the rulemaking process before they cause
did
any
that for
further
me?
damage to the industry. So, Mr. Chairman, what is the average amount of time and resources everyday companies will need to ensure they are properly complying with the excessive?
Oh, he's not going to tell you now. Why don't you write to us and we'll get back to you on that one.
Mandating companies to file on indirect emissions related
Southern
to
accent is
companies
beautiful. I
provide
love that Southern accent.
consistent
I tell you one thing about this. They rolled that March. Yeah, we down
Mr.
in Oklahoma there, boy.
Barr, you asked
I'll tell you what about my
similar
horse
question.
there.
Let me just put it in context, if I may. investors today are making investment decisions based on climate risk disclosures. We're trying to bring some comparability. You and other members
Can we hold this
have raised
POC on the 1 minute
about
time frame
greenhouse
at
gas
26,260?
emissions, so-called Scope 3, and
It's
for
going to be
listening
tight.
public, this is
The
of
second
the
this falls down,
value
we're going to make a
chain.
double
It's not
bottom
about the company
at
itself,
26,100.
it's
If it
about
holds,
suppliers
we can get that moved to the
or their
200, and the measured move
customers.
could take
we
it to
got a
266.
lot of comments in the
2660
public
is
file
it?
about
26,066.
Not just from members of Congress, but from small and medium-sized enterprises in your district and other districts, from farmers and ranchers and the like. We're taking a very close look at this. Our remit, our legal authority is about public companies. It's about the public companies. And
I know Bob Menery.
half
Like, I
of
met him
the
a bunch
top
of times.
1,000
He's
already
good
making
friends. He grew up with this
disclosures
guy that I'm
around
good
their
friends with.
emissions.
Me and Bob are
We
like one
understood
person
even
away.
in
It's
the
pretty crazy.
proposal.
I have his phone and I have his number in my phone.
So-called Scope
He won't answer my
3
calls, I'll tell you
is
that.
less
He thinks he's too
developed,
cool, you know.
It's less used, and we got a lot of feedback, and we're taking that under consideration and looking at it very closely.
Because when you make small businesses smaller because of regulations,
Yeah,
it's
and let
not
me
gonna work.
assure you, sir, and I've said this in a Senate hearing 2 weeks ago as well, our remit is just about those public companies. It's not the private companies in your district. My dad had a very small company too. That's not the remit of the SEC.
All right. The SEC's rulemaking process is unprecedented, proposing over 50 rulemakings since the spring of 2021.
Never seen it.
The SEC has failed to understand the impact of these rules and how they will each affect the industry, as well as the aggregate amount or impact. It is crucial that the SEC conduct cost-benefit analysis and solicit industry feedback of these proposals and what it will cost for the
Bob
participants
Menery is
that
hilarious.
the Commission oversees.
He went out of his spot all the
I
way
was proud to sign
down.
on to a
The
letter
guy's
by
about to go over the
Chairman
5th-yard
to
line,
you,
fell and his pants fell
highlighting
down.
our
I think he's
concerns
trying to
with
trip over his
rulemaking
feet there. This is disgusting. I've never seen anything like this in my entire life.
The SEC understands the regulatory and
Came all the way down for the sidelines. This is insane. You see what this man is doing?
Talked about. So, in closing, Chair, has the SEC engaged in any roundtables, field hearings, or investor testing?
When he did
to really solicit
the dude spinning,
feedback,
and he's like, I think he just crapped his pants.
Again, it was good to read your letter about 8 p.m. last night. It was a good letter.
You know, Bob is ridiculous.
But in terms of your
If y'all don't know
question,
Bob Menery, he's ridiculous.
We solicit feedback in the formal way through the comment period. We solicit feedback and have hundreds of meetings, sometimes on any one rule with market participants, and then we detail them in the files.
I'll watch
And
it,
we
Cruxy.
benefit
We'll
from
watch
that
him pig
feedback.
tonight, all right, with Nicolas Cage.
Thank you. I yield my time back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Vargas, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank the chair and the ranking member for giving me the opportunity to speak. And I want to say, Mr. Chairman, it's good to see you, but I have to say it was even better to see Chairman Lucas. Chairman Lucas was the chairman of the Agriculture Committee when I first came to Congress 11 years ago. He was eminently fair and a good person to work with. And we have an 1,800-pound bull on our property, on our ranch. And I got to tell you, don't mess with those animals. Those are big animals. They can do a lot of damage. So it was great to see him here today. Like I said,
These guys are all ranch
I think
owners,
everyone
multi-million-dollar
really has
ranch
great
owners.
Respect for him. But it's great to see you here. You were asked somewhat of a catch-22 question earlier, and that was you were supposed to produce some documents, and within those documents was a letter that was, given to you by this committee. And then in that situation, it's either you disclose that letter is in there, and they say, aha, you disclosed the letter that we sent you, how typical. Or if you didn't, you'd say, boy, he didn't even disclose the letter that we sent him. So you were sort of caught in a catch-22 no matter which way you answered. I'm glad you disclosed the letter. But then you were asked, I think, a very ugly and unfortunate question about a recent senator and your interactions with him because he's been indicted. I think there was an insinuation there that maybe that something that you did was inappropriate or improper. Could you comment on that, please?
Oh, wow.
Well, I can't comment about a criminal prosecution.
No, not about the criminal prosecution, but the insinuation that you possibly did something that was inappropriate in your conversation with him on the phone.
Oh, no, I mean, I didn't discuss anything with the senator in May of 2021, except for his concerns about federal securities laws and disclosure, if I recall. But there might have been other topics that he talked about around disclosure around diversity by investment advisors.
Yeah, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to say that because, again, I think that was a bit of an unfair question. And so,
In a role like mine, engage with senators and members of the House of Representatives, and we benefit from those engagements.
Yeah, no, I agree. But again, thank you for being here, and thank you for answering that question. Now,
Price has gone flat
I take a very
last few
different
minutes,
view
just
of
completes this.
climate-related risks, of course, on this side, and I think it is one of the biggest issues that we face as a world and certainly as a country. And the reasonable standard, again, was created by
We need to
Thurgood
stop filling
Marshall. That is
oceans
the
with
reasonable
plastic.
person, the
Like,
elementary
that's a
reality.
fact.
What would a
You
reasonable
know what I mean?
person want to know? And it seems to
We
me
need to
with all
stop
the
using
headlines
plastic
that we
bags
have
for
and all the
everything.
information that we have about climate-related risk, and I could go through a whole bunch of headlines here, which I won't, but it seems to be that this is a gigantic issue, and people want to know, and in fact, people do want to know, and companies have been disclosing this for a while. So I think you're on the right track. But you're not a climate change organization, are you? You're not the cop on the beat for that.
No, we're a securities regulator and disclosure-based regulator, and that's what we're trying to do here is just, as I've often said, investors are making decisions today about public companies based on their climate risk disclosures, and it's trying to ensure that it's truthful, it's accurate, it's decision useful.
Yeah, and in fact, this is what people want to know today, isn't it? I mean, any investor today that reads the newspaper, especially if they're invested in insurance or a company like that, they say, well, why isn't my company, insuring in California or along the, the areas in Florida that get swamped all the time with these huge hurricanes? Well, it's because of climate change. And now, interestingly,
climate has been changing for 1,000 years, man.
Say, no, we have the scientist that says
climate changes.
Isn't real. Now, basically, all the climate scientists, all the scientists agree. Now, you got some knuckleheads that are column writers that say...
Knuckleheads. There's a guy out of MIT, one of the smartest person I've ever seen, and he has some conflicting... He's from MIT, one of the smartest guys in the world. So. But you do whatever you want.
Investors want to know about this.
I'm not saying there isn't an issue. We need to stop putting plastic in the oceans. We need to stop doing a lot of things. We need to be careful when unelected bureaucrats start telling us what to do.
Mentioned the Supreme Court law of the land.
Like Klaus Schwab.
Substantial likelihood that a reasonable investor finds it significant.
They're telling you that the world is heating up. You know that Iceland recorded its coldest temperature last winter in the last 100 years? Iceland,
today,
I want to make this clear. Reykjavik had its coldest temperature in the last 100 years last winter. I just want to make that clear, just so anyone knows. But Boston suffered some of the coldest days I've ever seen here in February. It was like -10 or something.
Top 1,000 companies are making
Shout out to my Narubus. Shout out to my Narubu people. Shout out to my Anukas.
Discussions about that.
Shout out to the Anukai.
In terms of climate risk, a lot of companies are making disclosures already.
Well, thank you again for being here. My time is up, so
thank God.
My last 7 seconds, I thank the chair again. Thank you, Ben.
Oh, that's nice of you.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Minnesota, the whip. Mr. Emmer is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chair Gensler,
I got the whip, baby.
Questions that require a yes or no answer, and in the interest of my limited time, I'd appreciate it if you would comply with that.
Wow.
Mr. Gensler, is it fair to say generally
this guy goes
large
hard.
institutions in any given industry benefit more from regulatory
Mr.
uncertainty
Loudermilk.
than everyday market
No, actually, this is Emmer. That's Tom Emmer, man. I'm about to say, that's Emmer, dude. He went hard. Tom Emmer goes hard. I was about to say, that's not Emmer. That's not Loudermilk. That's Emmer, bro. That's my man, Emmer.
Large institutions could benefit.
Yes or no?
Reclaiming my time. The answer is yes, sir. Mr. Gensler, you had an 18-year career at Goldman Sachs where you were partner and co-head of finance, correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And is it
He don't like it. He don't like it at all. Yo, he's pissed.
Wealth directly through your employment at this bank, Goldman Sachs.
I've done well since then.
Yes or no? Yes or no?
I'll take that as a yes as well. You described the SEC under your leadership as the cop on the beat watching out for our constituents, correct?
I think that's a
yes or no?
And I think you've said that.
Yes or
my time. The
no?
answer is yes, sir. If you could
Please,
just
he
comply with
already
what
went
I've asked,
over
I
this.
appreciate it.
You're not
Given
allowed to
your
say anything
18-year
else.
career at one of the biggest banks in the world and the personal financial fortune you amassed there, do you think it's possible for you to serve as an impartial regulator and not favor large financial intermediaries?
Absolutely, sir.
Well, Mr. Gensler, do you believe the vast majority of digital assets meet the investment contract test and
Yo, he
therefore
just
securities
slammed him,
operating
yo.
illegally outside of the U.S. regulatory umbrella?
As I've said, many of these assets are basically the public is anticipating
Sir, is
profits
that a yes?
based on the efforts.
Is that a
of
yes or a no,
Is the answer then
dude?
yes?
My man.
Again,
He
without
asked you
prejudging
3
anyone,
times,
I do
bro.
think that the
I
significant
can't
majority
take
are
this
I'll
stuff,
take it as a
man.
yes. And to be clear, sir,
we
this
the people, we
perspective has
elected this
nothing to
man.
do with a concern you noted in a speech last year where you said, quote, "Over the past year, several bank executives have shared their concerns with me about the sheer number of depositors who have moved money from their bank accounts into crypto-related exchanges and wallets," end quote. Right?
The concern that those bank executives raised was that there's
Again, I'm reclaiming my time,
customers
sir.
were getting
No,
hurt. in
I've
the
asked you to
market.
answer the questions as short as I can so I can use the time I have, and it's clear that you would like to avoid answering the questions, in my opinion. An Obama-appointed judge in the Southern District of New York, a bank-friendly jurisdiction where you bring most of your cases, recently found that decentralized financial technology, quote, not only removes the so-called middlemen from these transactions, but it also allows users to interact through a variety of methods in an easy and efficient manner, end quote. The court also said underwriters, like the ones at banks where you work, sir, are, quote, precisely the types of individual roles that decentralized exchanges were designed to eliminate, end quote. Mr. Gensler, can you assure this committee that your style of regulation by harassment towards digital asset innovation is to the benefit of every American and not driven by your desires to protect industry incumbents?
This is a field that's rife with fraud and manipulation, and I'm looking out for the American investors who've been hurt by the crypto.
Yeah. I'll reclaim
fraudsters
my
and
time. Mr.
scammers.
Gensler, despite your years of rhetoric, like today, I'm convinced you are not an impartial regulator. Instead, it's clear that you are working to consolidate your own power, even though it means crushing opportunities for everyday Americans and, frankly, the financial future of this country. Even the federal courts are highlighting the damage you, sir, are doing to our constituents, and they're telling you that you don't have the legal authority to accomplish your goal of squashing competition in the financial markets. Congress has been telling you that too. Now, Mr. Gensler, I believe our great financial system is the definition of freedom in this country. And congressional policies must provide room for the traditional financial system to evolve alongside the disruptive digital asset ecosystem.
So well spoken.
That said, it
So
cannot
well
be
spoken.
understated that a common theme throughout your career, sir, is your relentless loyalty to the largest financial institutions at the clear expense of innovation, competition, and everyday Americans. I yield back.
I suspect some large financial institutions would
Somebody
not
yields
agree
back.
with that.
There's no question, sir. I've yielded back my time.
Shut your mouth, boy.
Gentleman yields back.
No one asked you to
Gentleman from New
speak.
Jersey, Mr. Godheim is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
He said, yo, no one asked you a
Chairman Gensler,
question.
Shana Tova.
Shut your mouth.
See you.
Shana
Yo,
Tova, may this year bring you health and happiness.
You too, sir. If I can begin, in your testimony, you said that it generally takes 12 to 24 months for the SEC to proceed from issuing a new rule proposal to adopting it as a final rule. That may seem like a long time, but I assure you, as it's not a very long time for some of the smaller stakeholders that I speak to, about who are spending so much of their time and resources and running their business and trying to compete. And of course, you know, I'm getting concerned, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this as well. Are you worried at all that all these rules are putting smaller and medium-sized
Let's get those likes up to the watchers, everyone. We had over 800 people on this live.
Larger ones.
We
that can
still have
better
686
handle
people. The
illusions of all
retention
the
is insane.
proposals.
I love each and every one of you.
Is there
God
an
bless the
unintended
lifers.
consequence of actually limiting the flow of capital to smaller and medium-sized businesses and favoring the larger ones?
Look, and we've talked about this in your office as well. I think that we benefit hearing from those small businesses. We often then look to adjust.
He knew exactly
the
what
rules
questions he was
based
getting
on
from
those
that guy.
comments. And also,
He had emailed
if
him
the
already. We
rules
already know that
adopted
happens.
The implementation and compliance dates, and sometimes we stage that, whether it's over 12.
Staged. See how he said
24
staged?
months and
Right when I said that?
after a rule is adopted.
You don't think that was
Part of my concern
staged.
is, and I
Very
appreciate our
staged.
ongoing discussion on this front.
He knew exactly what next question's coming. He knows this
By
question.
my count,
Watch.
you've issued 50
They're
separate
too close.
rules, and there are another 14 new rules on your most recent unified agenda that are scheduled to propose in the coming months. And I'm just trying to figure out the volume, what this means for the smaller stakeholders, and they just don't have the back end, the regulatory back end to be able to engage with the SEC and don't know how to engage with the SEC in some ways. How do you think about that? How are you trying to shape the agency to really allow for them to also have a fair shot at comment period?
Well, in part by putting out the agenda itself 2.5 years ago. We've now proposed the bulk of that. and then working through. We take meetings even after comment periods, all the way up to sometimes a few weeks before we
always has
adopt.
the shaky thumb.
And so to keep engaging with us.
That stanky leg.
And certainly if there's, not a shutdown, we're here. We're ready to take those meetings.
Yeah, just sometimes just so you should know, just some feedback that they often feel they don't know how to come into the agency, how to utilize the agency, that it can be intimidating, especially if you're a smaller player, you just don't know really how to do it, and they don't have these big regulatory teams.
I would say that sometimes those are the best meetings. They're not necessarily the meetings that show up on the calendar as much, but they really are very helpful to hear from those smaller asset managers, those smaller broker-dealers, or public companies.
I'd like to shift gears to digital assets. In July, I was proud this committee passed comprehensive digital asset legislation, bipartisan, including my amendment directing the SEC and CFTC to do a joint rulemaking, creating a process for delisting an asset. Since 2019, I've said that clear rules of the road for digital asset firms are critical to protect consumers and promote innovation here in the United States. You've claimed that you have all the authority you need, I know before us, but a rulemaking process hasn't started yet. Can you explain to us why, please?
Well, because there's already laws and rules in the books. There's rules and laws in the book that apply to crypto security tokens.
He
like
gets
they apply
giddy
to
when a lady
others.
talks to him. He's like,
And,
oh.
There's nothing incompatible because you're storing something of value on a blockchain ledger. We talked earlier about being technology neutral. Whether you're storing that at DTCC, the public clearinghouse, or you're storing it on an accounting ledger called blockchain,
It's a
still a
security.
transfer of value, and the public is maybe, depending on the token, anticipating
Depending on the
profit
token.
based on the efforts
The
of others.
token.
As it relates to the crypto,
Ethereum is
so-called
not a
crypto
security.
exchanges,
Now it is.
They're doing what we wouldn't even allow anywhere else. They're commingling, co-bundling, trading against the public, and sometimes front-running the public on their platforms.
So memorandums of understanding have long been used and adopted in a number of contexts.
Goldman Sachs
in
had
June
a
2022,
fake
you
short
told the Financial
where they were
Times you were
shorting in the
working
back room.
on an MOU
A guy
with
came out
the
and
CFTC
made a
to avoid
documentary about
regulatory
it.
gaps for crypto. Can you give us an update on the status of the MOU, please?
I was hopeful that we would do something there, but what we do is on a case-by-case basis and issue-by-issue basis work with the Commodity Futures Trading Commission with regard to this crypto field. They have important authorities. They execute against those authorities. We do against our authorities, really both with the same goal of protecting the public.
Thank you, May. Have a sweet new year. Thank you.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Huizinga, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good to be back. I was out of order here because I was in a bipartisan meeting with the Speaker talking about a debt commission, and I hope that that is going to be part of the path forward that we are dealing with government funding and our long-term debt. But I want to move quickly, but I want to follow up on some of Chairman McHenry's line of questions and remarks. And I'm not going to belabor the whole
900 votes
situation
in this.
where we
Can you believe that?
public documents that you've given us on our request that's been out there for over 7 months. No real information except for that which was FOIA'd by the public. Our request simply seeks to obtain information to better understand the black box of the SEC's activities on climate-related measures and its rulemaking authority. And you had said in your own remarks, quote, based on authorities granted by Congress. Well, I dispute the assertion that you've been granted that authority in this particular case, and we are a co-equal branch of government, and this is routine congressional oversight. So let's talk a little bit about the commission vote for the climate request. When Chair McHenry asked, have you scheduled a vote for the commission? I did not hear an answer on that. Or when will a vote be scheduled? I did not hear an answer on that. There's 13,000 emails and documents we've been told that are ready to be produced, but are being held up by a provision within the Exchange Commission, 24C, Exchange Act, sorry, I should say. It requires a vote of the SEC commissioners, is your assertion, or the commission's assertion. Lawyers differ on that, and it's my understanding that you claim that you don't have the votes necessary on the commission But, Mr. Gensler, I want to ask you this. Are you personally ready to vote yes to produce these documents to this committee?
No.
We
Yes or no?
continue to work with your staff and continue to work. We have voted as a commission on the, I think they're called transcribed interviews of.
This transcribed interviews are very different than the documents that we have requested. I'm asking you, not about the commission. Are you voting yes, and will you vote yes on giving that information to our committee as requested?
Again, as I've said, I truly believe in the oversight of this committee. And
yes?
working with the committee to
yes or no?
Working with my fellow commissioners, and we're.
I want to know what you are going to do, not speaking for anybody else. You.
Again.
Yes or no?
Sir, again, we're working through this at the commission level.
Come on.
And with.
All right,
with your
this is
staff.
ridiculous. Okay, so let's assume your answer now is no. So what have you done to try to produce a vote of any sort? Are you talking to your fellow commissioners? Are you whipping them? Are you asking them to vote for that?
We have ongoing discussions. We, of course, have to have it one-on-one
Okay.
because of the Government and Sunshine Act.
All right. Frankly, we've been pretty cloudy over here on the congressional side. I mean, you're fulfilling FOIA requests, but you will not give that same information to Congress. That's a problem. So under 24C, delegated authority by the commission allows you to do those FOIA requests without a vote of the commission. Seems to me maybe we need to help you out. Does that seem reasonable? Because here's our problem. What happens if you never get the votes? What's your plan? Ignore Congress?
We're going to continue to working with you.
What is your plan? Because we've got a plan. The chairman outlined the plan. And it begins with a P and ends in oxy, and it's not a real fun word that any of us want to fulfill.
Again, we're continuing to work and trying to get you documents on a regular basis.
But you are not. You are giving us publicly available documents. That is not the role of oversight. So, okay, so are you open to legislation that would clarify that the SEC is not required to have a full commission?
This is a real
vote to
business,
comply
man.
with
Like, give me
requests
my
of Congress
answers,
in Congress or this committee?
Again, I'd have to have staff look at the legislation. We'd give technical assistance as we give it on other provisions.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we don't need your technical assistance because so far the technical assistance has gotten us nothing. So, I enthusiastically support the chair's discussion of using compulsory process, and it's shameful that you're hiding behind this 24C process, and that the commission is. And we are going to have to remedy that, apparently, based on your lack of cooperation.
Shout out to the chat. I love the chat.
One last
here.
quick question.
A lot of good
Did you ever receive a memorandum or agency
This-
document in writing assessing the Supreme Court's decision on West Virginia versus EPA on the SEC's rulemaking authority?
I mean, this meeting is polarizing because you guys, like, we're getting more comments than ever because
I know that we've had discussions. I don't remember.
pulling out a lot of emotions out of you. You guys,
I'm going
and
to ask you
all
to
of us.
follow up. My time has
I've read the
expired.
Supreme Court
Gentleman's time's
opinion.
expired.
We're going to have you follow up in writing with that, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Enough is enough.
Gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Castens, right.
I just want to make it clear. We voted, like, whoever, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, where you are, those people in that area voted for whoever these people were there. And when they ask a question, they're asking a question for thousands of hardworking Americans, right? So when you disrespect someone like that, or when it seems like he's not going to answer certain questions, it's disrespectful to the American
Chairman.
people.
Nice to
Like,
see you
I
again,
take it as the
Secretary.
representative of the people, right?
I want to talk about your climate disclosure rule. I know that surprises you that I want to talk about that. And I realize that with it coming out soon, I'm not going to be able to get into specifics, but I do just want to expand a little bit. You had mentioned to Mr. Cleaver that investors were asking for more clarity because of all the voluntary disclosures that are out there. And I think, but I don't want to be presumptuous, that there's some history there that I'm hoping you can share, because I think in 2010, SEC drafted sort of interpretive guidance regarding more voluntary disclosures. Can you clarify what happened between 2010 and then 12 years later in March of 22 when the SEC decided that it was necessary to provide some more disclosure, and specifically if you can comment, like, what was industry asking you for?
So a lot changed in the 12 years, particularly investors got more and more interested making investment decisions. And here in the U.S., companies responded, their investor relations and their CFOs and corporate executives responded to meet those requests by investors. and they started following something that was called the TCFD framework. You're probably familiar with this international framework, which interestingly was 32 people that were mostly from industry. They weren't government sector that came to this framework. And so by 2021, 80+% of the top 1,000 companies were making some climate risk disclosures. That's what really changed. Investor demand for investor decision-making, and that's where the SEC has a role.
Well, I appreciate that. That certainly is consistent with my experience in the private sector, and I think it's said that we need to keep reminding folks that this was a really industry-led initiative in the first instance. I want to move to the state level because
shout out to Zero.
A little while ago, you had mentioned to the Wall Street Journal that if California finalized some rules, I think your quote was, you said, this may change some of the economic baseline of the commission as it relates to the pending order. And of course, last month, the California legislature did pass a package of climate disclosure bills, which I understand only relates to companies beyond a certain size that do business in California. But given your earlier comments, can you speak to how, if at all, that is factoring into how you're thinking about the disclosure and whether you're still on pace for an October release, as you'd earlier indicated?
So in terms of, we look at the economics very seriously, and that law that was passed in California is not yet signed, but if it were signed into law, as I understand it, that would require companies of a certain size to report on their climate risk, I think over $500 million in revenues, and those over $1 billion in revenues to report greenhouse gas emissions. And for the listening public—
And on a Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 basis, it's worth pointing out.
All three of these scopes. But for the listening public, it's estimated that somewhere between 1,400 and 1,500 public companies might need to report under that law. We have not confirmed that number. That's just an estimate that's in the press. And so that may change the baseline. If those companies were reporting to California, then it would be, in essence, less costly than, because they've already been producing that information. It's also important that the investing public, again, because they're making decisions based on those public reports, that they're accurate, that they're truthful, because the investing public benefits making sure that the accuracy of the disclosures.
And you had indicated that you were targeting an October release date for the final rule. Are you still on that pace? Can you speak that? And does California's actions in any way change that?
Let me just put this a little in context. Twice a year, working with the Office of Management and Budget, we put out what's called a unified agenda, and we put dates on all of the proposals really in 2 different dates of the year. So I wouldn't, with all respect, put too much emphasis on that. It's really with 16,000 comments. We've gone through, it's 15, 16 months since we made the proposal. It tends to take, again, 12 to 24 months. But we're not doing this against a clock. When the staff's ready, when the commission's ready.
Well, thank you. Got more questions, but I'm out of time, so I yield back. Thank you again for being here.
Gentleman yields back. We'll now go to the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Loudermilk, for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Gensler, thank you for being here. Mr. Chairman, without objection, I'd like to submit for the record a Wall Street Journal article.
My milk is louder than yours. That's a loud tie.
Warren Stevens and Paul Riley, entitled "The SEC Wants to Spy on Your Portfolio."
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Gensler, as the op-ed points out, prior to the consolidated audit trail, the government needed legal cause to force financial institutions to report their customers' personally identifiable information. In your opening statement, you refer to the SEC as cop on the beat. But law enforcement has to comply with due process. And I'm convinced that the consolidated audit trail has the potential to become another warrantless surveillance program. And as we have all experienced, if you extend the government power, that power will inevitably be abused, as we saw with the FISA courts, especially if that power does not have direct oversight and control by Congress. My first question, Ms. Gensler, have you read this article? The Wall Street Journal just came out the other day about the consolidated audit trail.
I may have, I feel like it's in the last 2 days. I saw the headlines.
All right. So it goes on to explain the problems that I've laid out several times when you've been here before about
What am I,
the
Tinder
collecting
over here?
of personal identifiable information, and quite frankly, a lot of
Chat's getting
information about
crazy.
individuals and their buying of stocks. In fact, when you were here last time, I believe that you expressed the purpose of this is so you could peruse to look for any potential illegal activity. That's a blatant violation of the Fourth Amendment. That is what this article is spelling out, and it's gotten the attention
Life
of a
or
lot
dating.
of people, even outside the financial services arena. So I would encourage you to please read it, because I think it explains the concerns that many of us have about this program. Also, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to submit for the record a letter that was sent by me and my colleagues to Mr. Gensler regarding the Consolidated Audit Trail.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Gensler, regarding this letter, in the letter I ask about the 3,000 individuals, estimated number of people or institutions that would have access to the Consolidated Audit Trail or the Customer Account Information System. 3,000 would have access to it. Who are these individuals, and how will they be vetted for access to such sensitive information?
One, I do look forward. I will read the article that you mentioned. Two, in terms of individuals, it's only allowed to be used, this Consolidated Audit Trail, at the SEC and the self-regulatory organizations. At the SEC, it's their Division of Enforcement.
Someone just asked me a serious question. All right. Lifer, I know you and Ben are friends, but he cheated on his wife and was with other women the other day. That was poor behavior, and wondering why you stand so strong with him. Just wondering. Number one, the number one commandment in the Bible is thou shalt not judge. So I am a servant of God, and I'm not supposed to judge what another man does. Now, I don't personally do that, okay? I'm a family man with my family, but I'm not here to talk about someone else, man. Leave other people's personal lives out of your life. It's none of your business. It's none of mine. What is my business is my crypto career and where I'm going. And I know someone that had a budding YouTube channel, and they were able to put me on it when it had 1 million followers, man. And that was the biggest blessing. And honestly, I will never forget that. No matter, you know what I mean? Like, I will never forget that. So I'm a loyal guy. And I stand by people who have been good to me. And yes, he's made mistakes. But can 2-3 years from now, can he make it right? 5 years from now, is he going to be a different guy? Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? So I will speak on that. Like, I'm a regular guy. And I am not other people, man. So I get to be friends with whoever I want to be friends with. And just because someone does something wrong doesn't mean that I condone it. And doesn't mean that I think it's okay, all right? But I do remember who helped me, and I am loyal to people that have always been there for me. And I'm not fake. And no matter how much stuff I get and how many people look down on me or how much hate or whatever it is, I'm okay with that because I live in love, man, and I know that I wouldn't have gone as far as I got to this day without the help from Ben. And I'll never forget that. And I'm sorry that these situations occurred, and people might have their own feelings. But if you live in love and you say thou shalt not judge, then you wouldn't ask me that question. So may God bless you, and I love you, and I have no pain against you. I understand. It's an open question. But I'm not going to address it again. I'm not going to address it again, all right? But I felt the need to address it, and that's it, all right? And I don't hide behind people that I've already been friends with just because they did something wrong, all right? Let ye with the yet ye who is sin cast the yet ye of no sin cast the first stone. Like, yet ye of no sin cast the first stone. We are all humans here with error. We are all made mistakes in our lives. We have all done things we regret. Everyone here on this chat. No one knows all the things you've done because they haven't been thrown out to the public. But I guarantee every single one of you in this chat has done something that you would not know, you would not want someone to know about, including me. Okay? And if you answer that question any differently, you are just not human. So, what do you want me to say? How dare you judge me so hardly? So many judging me so hardly. You know? Come on now. Amen.
Analysis of folks in our trading and market.
Contract with Howey in the Hills. And the court found that the combination of those two contracts, the total scheme, the total transaction, the total economic reality, was constitutive of an investment contract. And so a scheme or a transaction does not mean the absence of any contract at all. It means, as it did in Howey, a multiplicity of contracts.
Why is his mic so...
In August, there were
You're
6
too
law
close to your
professors
mic, dude.
from
Step
law
away
schools
from the
as
mic,
preeminent
man.
as Yale,
Step away
who
from
came
a
to the
little bit.
following conclusion, quote,
He's
no
leaning on his
decision
phone
of the
and
Supreme
he
Court
doesn't know.
has ever found that a scheme that does not involve a
loud in my
contract
ears, man.
could qualify
Get away from your
as an
mic,
investment
bro.
contract. And so do you disagree with that statement? And if so, could you please cite a decision of the Supreme Court that has found an investment contract in the absence of an actual contract?
The SEC has been in front of multiple courts, and investment contract has been...
What's the name of the case, Mr. Gensler? The Supreme Court case that has found an investment contract in the absence of an actual contract. Do you have the name? Can you cite a case?
The SEC, over the decades, whether it's
Can you cite a
chinchillas,
case?
whether it's
Okay.
whiskey caskets, whether it's crypto, if the public is investing based upon the efforts of others...
I find it telling that you cannot cite a single case.
That's a security.
Not a single... How about a Second Circuit case? Can you cite a single Second Circuit case
I
that found an investment contract in the absence of a
I
contract?
understand where you're trying to go, and I'm going to leave that to the very fine attorneys at the SEC in front of courts. But I'm saying the core principle
Mr. Gensler,
this is a field...
this is let me finish. This is a question to which you should know the answer, because the definition of an investment contract is the central issue. That's what determines the extent of your authority. That's what determines the applicability of federal securities law to crypto transactions. And your inability to answer that question is baffling to me.
I'm answering it consistent with what the Supreme Court has said, which is the law of the land is a 4-part test.
And yet you cannot cite a single case to support your
It's called
argument.
Howey, it's called Reeves, it's called many cases at the Supreme Court, sir. 8 or 9 times it's been affirmed by the Supreme
Can I ask, suppose I were to purchase a Pokemon card. Would doing so constitute a security transaction?
Like, this is a good question.
You could purchase a Pokemon card. I don't know what the context is, but...
Oh my God, it's a freaking Pokemon card!
Purchase a Pokemon
It's a
card.
Pokemon card, dude!
That's not a security.
Okay. If I were to purchase a tokenized Pokemon card
Is
on
that
a
a security?
digital exchange via a blockchain,
Is that a security?
Is that a security transaction?
I'd have to know more.
Okay. So for you, the process of tokenization is what transforms a
you
non-security
just said
transaction into a security transaction?
Look,
Huh.
if the
Like, let's find
investing-
the yeah.
technology
This is a great point right here, because this is how we form the new rules. This is it. Like, we need to have these discussions every single day. We need to have these discussions.
See, my time has expired. So.
Good job, Torres.
Someone's time has expired.
Those were good questions, man. I don't even know if he's. I don't know his. I don't care what his partisanship is. Those were great questions, man. That's a great way to form
A
that.
federal court called your rejection of a
Pokemon.
Bitcoin ETF, quote,
This is my buddy.
arbitrary and
I love this
capricious.
guy.
In a subsequent interview, you dismissed the judge's opinion. Asked a follow-up question, if anything a judge says would change your mind, you responded, quote, well, no, not really. It seems that you don't really recognize the authority of the judicial branch. You seem to have a love for the Howey test, selectively applied as illustrated.
Whenever
by
you
Mr.
want,
Torres.
yeah. Whenever you want to apply it.
But, you know,
Come on, dude.
in light of those reactions, you know, what should people make about the Bitcoin ETF? How will the SEC revise its approach?
We have great respect for the courts. I personally have great respect for the courts. We're considering that. It's still an active consideration at the commission.
He's holding that water tight.
Your mind. I got to tell you,
with the case.
Let me hold that
I
water.
got to tell you that many market participants have reached out and are concerned that you will arbitrarily, perhaps also capriciously, pull recent filings ahead of others who've been working with the SEC for years to get an approval for a Bitcoin spot ETF. Will this resemble some
Here we
sort
go.
of
This
free
is
pass for
what
one
we're here
favored
for today,
company
everyone.
while others
Everyone wants to
remain
hear this.
locked
This
out?
is why market's been
And I
flat.
ask
Everyone
that
wants to hear what he
because
says
it
right now.
seems That's happened before at the SEC.
Market's been flat for these reasons.
Sir, I'm
This
not
meeting
sure about
has flattened the
following.
market.
I mean, we're still considering that court case and the application, as you say, to Bitcoin exchange traded
We're still
products.
sideways in
Are
this
you gonna
ascending
preserve
triangle.
people's place
The
in
200,
line, or are
we
you
went
gonna
so
pull
flat, we
ahead,
never got a chance to pump up.
a favored transaction or another on the consideration of a Bitcoin spot ETF? Are you going to preserve the place in the queue? Because timing matters. People have worked on this for years, and then you get a recent filing by somebody big in the market, and it seems like, oh, yeah, let me take your calls. How can I help? Meanwhile, you've given the stiff arm, as I've said, Hotel California-style regulations where you can check in with the SEC, but you can never leave. Never leave with clarity. And how about the legislative branch? Do you recognize the authority of Congress or the laws that we pass?
Yes, we comply with the laws that
Really?
Congress passes every day.
Doesn't seem so.
Well, I've heard you say that about the courts and now Congress, which is encouraging, but I am inclined to judge your deeds more than your words. And, I'll pick up where one of my colleagues, Mr. Huizinga, left off with the Supreme Court decision in West Virginia versus the EPA. Are you familiar with that case?
Yes, sir, I'm familiar. It's an important case.
Glad to hear you say that. And it would be binding, correct?
It's the law of the land, sir.
That's right. And it introduces a major questions doctrine. And you told Mr. Barr that you received tons of feedback on your proposed ESG disclosure rules, feedback that should make clear that the proposal for ESG disclosure is a major question. And it should make clear that you don't have the legal authority to do that. So I'd ask you to knock it off. Cease and desist and work with this body to pass a law if you want to regulate something. Frankly, your time as chairman has highlighted two problems, a Gary Gensler problem and a structural flaw in the SEC.
Yeah.
And as I told you in April,
Thank God he did what he did because we could figure out what we need to change. If he didn't do it, then we'd be like, oh, then someone would have done it later.
You're making the case for this bill
Good point.
easier every day you are acting as the chairman. By doing rulemaking after rulemaking without any regard to the impact of these rules, or maybe that's the feature for you, I don't know. But
Maybe that's
it's
your
having
thing.
a massive impact on our markets. I mean, we have markets that truly are the envy of the world, and why would you disrupt them, with processes that are driving capital out of our markets? Not because to avoid our laws, but to find some place where they can get clarity, where they can work with a regulator and get a decision in a path forward. So instead of selectively applied, you're not providing clarity with a rule that's evenly applied. You're intentionally shortening comment periods to limit feedback. And the courts have even called this arbitrary and capricious. You're pushing a woke political and social agenda, and I think abusing your role and the authority of the SEC as cover. So, I think fundamentally, the SEC Stabilization Act would remove the role of chairman. It would preserve the current commissioners, but it would add a sixth commissioner. So there would be no more than 3 from any one political party.
I love this.
And so that would provide a path that would make the SEC do what you're avoiding. Frankly, you're front-running Congress, you're front-running the courts, you're front-running even the own administration, and no one has held you to account for that. I mean, I wish the Biden administration would say you're fired, but the list of folks they need to do that for is long. Congress hopefully will with the SEC Stabilization Act. I yield.
Oh, he hit it off. Worst run ever, yo.
Thank you,
Like,
Chairman, and to the ranking member for
horrible,
the hearing,
like,
to Chair Gensler for being here.
graceful.
While investor protection remains paramount for my colleagues and myself, it should not be lost on anyone here that the largest risk our investing public is exposed to at this moment is the risk of a government shutdown. We hear time and again in this committee that our capital markets are the deepest and most efficient in the world. And yet,
I knew he was gonna say
part
yet.
of why they were able to reach their presently enjoyed imminent status is because investors around the globe have confidence that the SEC has the power necessary to maintain fair and orderly markets. Without proper funding in place, the SEC cannot carry out that critical investor protection mandate, and I fear that as funding disruptions become increasingly more common, we risk losing the world's confidence. And so I'll continue working earnestly with my colleagues to avoid a counterproductive MAGA Republican inflicted government shutdown, but I ask all of my colleagues to consider the far-reaching consequences of this short-sighted path. Mr. Chairman Gensler, when we last spoke, I raised concerns regarding the open-end fund liquidity rule, and I appreciated your willingness to consider that the vast majority of my constituents do the bulk of their investing through their retirement plans. These hardworking Nevadans should not be at risk of losing out on today's price simply because they live on the West Coast. Chairman Gensler, as the SEC continues to evaluate its economic analysis for the open-end fund liquidity proposal, what have you been able to ascertain about the disparate impact for investors based on geographic location?
It's been raised by yourself, but it's been raised by members of the public.
Have you resolved it in the rule? And I only have 3 minutes.
It seems like Democrats and Republicans don't like him, except for the people that just nuzzy up to him and have it already, like, you know, kind of like, you know. You see people on both sides just really upset with him, man. It's not just it's just not a left or right issue. It seems to be a whole bipartisan issue with this man.
So will the geographic location be factored in your final rule, yes or no?
BlockFi will stop their apps.
It's an aspect of it, but it's still all funds today close at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Shout out to my Twitchians out there. Shout out to everyone on Twitch. God bless you.
Nevadans.
We do stream on Twitch every day.
So I'm going to keep pressing the issue until you understand that it's a disparate impact on those of us who live on the West Coast. And Nevadans should not be treated unfairly because of where they live. That needs to be factored in the final rule.
I agree,
Chairman
sir.
Gensler.
Then why don't you do
Mr.
something
Meeks
about it?
pointed out earlier, minority and women-owned firms still tend to be smaller as they work to overcome their traditional underinvestment and lack of working capital. As you heard previously, these smaller, more diverse firms will have more difficulty complying with the new disclosures required and will have less ability to absorb the cost associated with doing so. Earlier, you had begun discussing the expanded analysis the SEC made for the disproportionate impact on diverse and women-owned funds when the Commission considered the private fund advisor rule. Would you be able to expand upon your earlier answer that these funds were included in the analysis of small business and give us any specifics that your team found on the potential impacts on these funds?
I'd be happy to have staff follow up with the actual pages and the parts of the economic analysis, but it was considered as part of the effects on small investment advisors, including women and firms of minority-held firms.
It is a waning diversity. The issue of waning diversity in our equity markets is of great concern, and we must be careful about adding any additional burdens on these small firms. And I look forward to working with the SEC specifically on this issue. As I said, it's a wider issue, Mr. Chairman, and I worry that at a time when attacks on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, not woke, like my colleague just referred to, when the next time someone uses that word, will you define what you mean by it? Because to me, it means anti-diversity. It means anti-inclusion. And if that's what you stand for, then you don't represent me or my constituents. We are working hard to hold the line. There is nothing in any court decision by the Supreme Court or anywhere else
this dude at all.
that should quelch private sector's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. We must use every tool available to us to not only bring new entrants into the financial system, but to also promote their success within our financial institutions as well. I will yield back at this time.
Gentleman yields. The gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Rose, is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, and thank you, Chair Gensler.
He's a Democrat, man. He went hard.
Office in Maryland.
He sounded like a Republican.
Meeting. And I was also glad to see that you held an in-person open meeting last week for, I think, the first time during your chairmanship. I say that because, Chair Gensler, you are rarely in the office and conduct most of your meetings from the comfort of your home. And what I wonder is, how can we be sure of who you are meeting with on a daily basis? If perhaps someone from Better Markets comes over for dinner to discuss Europeanizing our U.S. capital markets, would that
I do have an
be
interview
law
at 1
that can
o'clock,
be
so I'm going to have to
made
make it.
publicly
At one point, I got to
available?
move. And I want to show you guys some
I
charts.
haven't had any of those dinners, but hypothetically, if I had that dinner, it would be logged.
I hope so, and I'm glad to hear that. Chair Gensler, in your written testimony, you state that, Quote, we also have finalized 24
It would be
rulemakings,
long.
nearly all of
I hope
which
so.
have changed
That's funny.
based on
That is
public
funny.
feedback, close quote. Approximately how many hours per week do you personally spend reading public comments submitted to the unprecedented number of proposed rulemakings issued by the SEC?
I work a lot of hours during the week. My kids are grown and out of the house. My girlfriend lives in a different city. So I don't know
My
how it breaks out. But I
girlfriend.
usually get summaries of the comments. But then staff gives me individual, if it's
Definitely
a member
divorced,
of Congress,
right?
I read all of the members of Congress comments personally. But then I get
Why did he get
examples,
divorced?
in each of the rulemakings, a handful on each of the issues.
Well, I'm glad to hear that as well. Chair Gensler, in May, I co-led a bipartisan letter to you along with my colleague Jennifer Wexton and 22 of our colleagues regarding troubling accusations that the China-backed fast fashion retailer Shein allegedly engages in human rights violations, including utilizing materials that may have been made using Uyghur forced labor. Do you believe that Shein should be required to certify via independent verification?
All right, I'm gonna have to call this. This was great. I actually enjoyed this a lot. I did. I probably will watch the very little end of it. Start a streaming. It's a 2-hour long. They usually end. They usually can join at 1 o'clock. I know we want to keep going with it. I have a interview with Kevin, cool guy. Yeah, so I can't keep going. I would love to, though. How do you store your crypto on a hard wallet, paper address, or an exchange? Let me know today. 102 votes coming on in there. Appreciate that for each and every one of you. Let's take a look at Bitcoin as we do every single day here. Didn't really get a chance to do my thing, and I do this for myself. So first thing I do is I look at a bigger time frame, and I start to look at my levels of price action. Just how I feel comfortable with gaining what's happening in the market, right? Resistance, support. We got our levels that are key for me to watch, right? We know if we lose certain levels where we're going. All right. One thing I talk about every single day on the channel is the 3-day hidden bullish. I've been bringing it up ever since I saw it, and it still is intact until we break the low. If we break that low, we ended up coming here lower than this low, then it will not be hidden bullish divergence. But right now it still is. And we even got above that little level there. Let's take a look at the 200 SMA and where it is. We're hugging it. If we can get back above it, that will also keep us bullish. I also see this as a constant, really tight little symmetrical triangle now that we're kind of getting really close to, right? That's a symmetrical, it's got some almost descending triangle vibes, but it's still kind of symmetrical triangle getting tight. We are going to, if we break this trend line, so a beautiful move is we break up here and we retest this level here. That would be a great long. So retesting 27.4, 27.600 would be amazing. That would be an awesome long. Keep that in the back of your mind because you'll breach this trend line. You'll probably get a spike up and then you can come down and retest. You got tight moving averages too. The 3-day doesn't look horrible. It really doesn't, and neither does the weekly. The weekly is saying, hey, these are times to accumulate Bitcoin. If I bought the weekly when it was low, right? Let's just see if the last 10 times I bought a low weekly. Let's go 1. That would have been a great price. 2, not too bad. I would have gotten in at 68. It would have dropped on me, but I would have been okay in the long run. 3 would have bought the bottom. So 1, the bottom. 2, an okay price. 3, the bottom. 4, you would have bought in somewhere right around here. Right here at about 10,000. So that's 4. All were great buys. 5, you would have gotten here, and the market did double from there. Went from 30 to 69, whether you sold or not. But, long term, that still could be a great buy for Bitcoin. But short term, it was an amazing place to get in. Here, you could say a short term pump, but that's all you got. So you could say those two weren't really in. And then 1, 2, 3. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times, right? Only 1, 2, and really 3 times did you not buy the bottom, but both times you did have a pump. All 3 times you did get a pump from that low area. This is screaming that these are allocated. And again, you could go up or down and it could take some time. I'm not saying this is the exact bottom of this local location, but whenever I start to allocate during low weeklies, it's always paid off for me. You can see the last 10 times, you'd only run 3 times, and you'd have to understand the overall market. We know we're in a bear market and we've come all down there. At that point, we were up in a pump and there was some retracement. So those 3 were kind of in areas where, so really after you've had a nasty bear market and after you've had massive capitulations, these places are the greatest places to accumulate Bitcoin. Again, I'm not a financial advisor, and that guy saying should be taken as financial advice. You do whatever makes you happy when it comes to this stuff. I can't force you, tell you, do you. I'm just showing you my real life and what I'm doing every day. But you saw me accumulate a whole Bitcoin in the last few weeks, and I'm going to continue to do so. So I tell you guys what I'm doing. I put my money where my mouth is. I don't BS you. I gave the trade last night. You saw it was up $500, 10% on $5,500. It was a $27,000 trade. I took $5,000 and put 10x leverage on it, or 5x leverage on it. Sorry, 5,400 with 5x leverage, 5,473. Anyway, hidden bullish divergence on the 3-day chart. All right, right off the bat, just something that we still have to heed, and it's still intact. Like, we're still intact. The 3-day actually right now, pretty strong candle with the wick to the upside. There's a high, there's a low, there's a high. That's a higher low on the 3-day. Bit of a cup with a handle, no, that could continue us to the upside. So there's still some signs of bullishness. The daily headed lower, but getting into this really nice falling wedge, right? So this is what I'm looking at. This is kind of what I played on the 8-hour time frame this morning. Last night before I went to bed, I saw the 8-hour looked really good. The Stokes were about to pump. I said, man, this thing is about to get lit. I can't believe it fell back inside the pattern. It's pretty weird. You know what I mean? Now, when you're back inside the pattern, you have to assume that you could make it to the bottom of the pattern now. This is the pattern at play right here, everyone. This is what we're looking at. Almost feel, actually, look at this. We broke out of the channel, and we're still out of the channel. On the 8-hour, we have broken out, and we are still outside. Look at that. We are still outside of the channel, which tells me that if I keep a stop loss below this low or in some, there's a chance that it could hang. Remember, the trade that I put out is still not, it didn't get stopped out. Like, you'd still, we entered here with a stop loss at this low right there, and the take profit was the length of this, right? Bang, right about there. Yeah, and there was our, it was like almost a 5-to-1 risk reward rate. Yeah, I'm going out. 28,868 was my target, and 25,550 was my stop loss. Somewhere at 25,550. Anyway, the trade has changed now since the entry. The entry was down there. Point of the story is this is still viable. We never got stopped out. The trade's actually above where we got in. It's actually still a positive trade. So only time will tell if you did take the 8-hour trade. I sold as the wick started to drop because I knew the 1 hour was likely going to drop down to the 200 SMA, the 21. Whenever you get this far from the white line, you're going to come back to it, and that's exactly what happened. This looks like a beautiful retest of this area. It looks like the longs that got in got clopped, but then they might bring us right back to the upside. Remember, the daily and the 22 look absolutely lovely for a pump, So you got to heed that. And as long as we stay above the point of control at 2660, there's a likelihood we get a move to the upside. Let's bring you back into the 1-minute chart, kind of show you what we were watching all day here on the channel. And so as the dump happened, I identified the divergence. We did open up a long. Many people were in profits from the long. I took a little short from up to here, long from up to here to here. Then we just kind of got stalled out inside of this ascending triangle, right? If price action can flatten out and the 200 comes close, so like if the 200 comes all the way here and we get tight, there's likelihood of a drop to the downside. That's what happens when they get really tight and the 200 kind of is the outlier. It's weird. My wrist hurts from I guess live streaming today and just rubbing it on the, just getting wet and rubbing it to 3 hours straight of being on that one spot. So, hey, what's going on there, guys? I know, but, come on now. Oh, sorry. Yep. So anyway, I'm watching this 1-minute time frame, right? And it is, to me, if it could come for a double bottom, it would be great. So let's watch for the double bottom on the 1 or the breakout above the 200 SMA. Either one of these. If we come here, that's an entry. If we get above the 200 SMA, I'm looking like it could be an entry. This looks to me as a retest. The last time we played a similar retest, it was right here. We had this falling wedge. We came right to it. I called that as a retest. It was a beautiful move. We seem to be repeating a similar idea here. I'm not guaranteeing anything. If we break back into the pattern, I will remain bearish, and we will drop back down here to the bottom of the pattern. So make sure we stay outside the pattern. It's an aggressive call to enter on the retest right now, but technically on the 1 hour, that is a retest. And you should basically get a bounce off this top trend line and go further to the upside. Completely up to you. You do whatever makes you happy. 8 hours still is ready to go, and now you have the 1 hour and the 4 hour, coming down to reset. Sadly, to say one last thing is that the 4 hour is fighting to kind of stay above the 200 SMA. Right now, this 4 hour candle will close below the 200. It's a bearish sign in general. But what I do is I look at patterns, and I play a pattern the same way. So, for instance, And what I mean by this is if we broke out of a pattern but broke back inside, all right, like if you break out of a pattern but you break right back inside of it, then I treat the pattern the same way. So we're still now in a symmetrical triangle that could go either way. And now you're looking at what? The 4 hour, which is just getting started to dump on you. So I would heed this 4 hour time frame. All right. I didn't get a chance to look at it yet, how high it was. I figured it had come down by now. So the 4 hour did not come down. You're going to hope that the 4 hour just slightly bends here and doesn't head lower. I'd be really weary if we lose this trend line. That means you're going to break down the length of the base of this to the downside. So there could definitely be a 4 hour move. That's sketchy. So what we're looking for, again, and we'll go back into the smaller time frame, and I accidentally deleted my top line. I apologize. We're looking for this to act somewhat like a retest. If it starts to fall inside this pattern, the symmetrical triangle is breaking down, and your measured move takes you to 25,800. Let's take a look at BOOKMAP. Where is the liquidity? Even though it's been, it didn't give us the liquidity yesterday, so they spoofed us, and I traded it anyway. But the liquidity does suggest that we go further to the downside than to the upside. So I will watch that 4 hour. If anything, it looks like they got a bunch of people to long. There's now a bunch of stops down here, and they can go crush those stops first. So be careful. If that comes back down, it looks like we may be making a bit of a what? A diamond pattern. So I'm going to get you preemptively ready for the diamond before anyone really even tells you it's happening. And look, it looks like we're going to yoke down, yoke back up, make a diamond, and get on out of here. So I'm projecting a diamond way before it even exists. But if that short comes down, we're going to get the whipsaw, and there's a good chance that the 4 hour does create a diamond. In from the bottom, out from the top, we'll see. So shout out to everybody here on the live. Appreciate each and every one of you for being here. I'll keep you kind of watching this stuff in the trading group. I'll have some updates throughout the afternoon, and we'll be also looking for altcoins. If you got into TRB, I was hoping for a little flag for continuation. It just continued to pump. We did give you the initial entry. I see a possible parabola forming for TRB. Like weeks from now, it could be somewhere up into the, into some big levels. So pay attention. This goes sideways and consolidates. The next pump is coming, and it can kind of continue this parabola. TRB banging to the upside. Shout out to everybody here on the live. Thank you for jumping on in. Appreciate each and every one of you for being here, sharing your most precious asset with me, and that is your time. Welcome to the 551 who stayed. God bless each and every one of you. I cannot believe we kept over 500 people for 3 hours straight. That is something that I've never almost seen. You guys are amazing. I appreciate each and every one of you. We are growing every single day. This channel is going all the way to 100,000. We're on our way to 50K. I will work so hard and diligently for each and every one of you. Shout out to my elite. Shout out to Master Friend. Join the classes. Hit the links in the description below. We did all our trading today on MEXC, all right? MEXC. You may not know that. It's a new exchange a lot of people don't know about, all right? It's gaining momentum, but there's still a lot of people that don't know what MEXC is and what it does. Also, if you want to join my trading group, head on over to the brand new spanking website that took me 6 months to create. All right. It took me a long time. CryptoLifer.com. Check me out. Join today. Look at all the different things. This website is amazing. It has everything you need, all the different plans that you could jump on in. We can't wait to see you guys inside the trading group. CryptoLifer.com. Jump on in there today and join the trading group. It'll blow your mind. You won't believe what you learn there. And I have other people to teach you stuff, not just me. I've collected a mass of amazing people from around the world that are willing to show you and teach you and bring you into things that you had never even thought possible. I'm telling you right now, I will work diligently every single day to give you the information and keep you kind of, on that next level. So, MEXC, I don't know why that is all jumbled today. Usually doesn't do it all jumbled, right? No, I can't even. What's going on here? Yeah, thanks, bro. Oh, I have too many characters. That's weird. I do that all the time. That's strange. Oh, you had the conference link there too. That's why, and it made it too long. I don't know why I did it all. Yeah, it's supposed to do it like that. Yeah. Anyway, what I want to do is just make these links easily and accessible to all 500 of you. If you want to join my trading group, hit the link there. We pin these up. We'll take this down now. We'll end the poll. And it's back to the charts, right? Of course. Yep. All right, God bless each and every one of you. Thank you so much for being here. Hello. Hello. Thank you, brother, for all you do for us. God bless you, Joe Allen. God bless everybody here. No sound. See you later. No sound. All right. Anyway, God bless everybody here. Thank you for being here. I'll catch you tomorrow on another beautiful live stream. Hello is a great project. We have Hello. We already own it. And we have Wait Token too. We found it like a long, long time ago. We're way ahead of you guys. God bless everybody. Have a wonderful day. And we'll see you tomorrow on the next live stream. Thank you. And that's my baby in the background. Crypto's